Chapter 1547. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Chen Jianlong laughed out loud and said fiercely, "The Li clan deserves to be punished for what it is today. Since we are enemies with each other, what internal and external problems do we have to talk about? My suggestion is simple. We will kill our way over and exterminate the entire Li clan. As for the Li clan's wealth, we will split it equally." A supreme martial artist from the Shi clan said, "That's right. We have always done this to other clans. Why should the Li clan be an exception?" More than 30,000 people from the 8 super clans and law enforcement officers came to the northwest. Now there are less than 5,000 people left. Are those who died for nothing? If we don't gain anything, do we have to pay for the compensation ourselves? That's right. Are those who died for nothing? The brothers who had died all had families back home. If they couldn't get any benefits from this place, what would happen to those people? If the clan loses its pillar of support, won't they be bullied to death? The Li clan is a loser. A loser should have the awareness of being a loser. This is the rule of the martial world. It has always been like this. Why should the Li clan be an exception? For a moment, everyone seemed to be filled with righteous indignation and everyone was righteous. Diwu Qingru said lightly, "I'm just reminding you that you and the Li clan are both big clans. The Li clan is like this today. If one day your clans also end up in the same situation, what will you say? The winner takes all. What else is there to say?" Qin Jinlong was unhappy and said, "If we lose, we lose. If that day really comes, it will be our wives and children who deserve to die. What else is there to say?" As he said this, a cold voice said, "That's right. I hope you remember your words. If the Qin clan is destroyed one day, then it will be your wives and children who deserve to die. I won't let any of them off." Everyone turned around and saw a young man in black standing in the wind. His eyes were shining as he looked over. His voice wasn't loud, but it was full of murderous intent. Everyone was shocked. The person who spoke was the master of Calamity Sword, Chu Yang. It had actually sunk into a deathly silence. No one dared to belittle this sentence. Because the person who spoke was Chu Yang, the master of Calamity Sword. If someone else said this, they would only laugh. But when it came from the master of Calamity Sword, everyone felt the pressure. The master of Calamity Sword had never been defeated in 10,000 years. Brother Calamity Sword was invincible. The master of Calamity Sword was bound to unify the heavens. According to the history of the past 100,000 years, their clans were almost destined to be destroyed in this person's history. His words was a prophecy that was likely to come true. How was the pressure on them? Next to him, Tribulation and his brothers had also gathered together. Pairs of cold eyes were looking at this side. Everyone was speechless for a moment. They wanted to say a few harsh words, but they couldn't. Even at this moment, the Allied forces were still hundreds of times more powerful than Chu Yang and the others. If the two sides really fought to the death, Chu Yang and the others would have absolutely no chance of survival. If it was a simple comparison of strength, it might only take a few masters of the lower grades to kill the Tribulation brothers and the Tribulation Sword Master. But the problem was that Chu and Chu didn't participate in the previous battle. They were fresh troops now. They had another advantage, which was that they could retreat at any time. If they didn't want to fight and just ran away, even Xiao Qinyu might not be able to catch up with them. Moreover, the land of Tribulation still had Mo Tianji, the think tank. Commander Diwu had solemnly stated before that they had only used the sunlight formation of the 3 lights formation so far. There were still 2 formations left. Who knew how Calamity Sword would arrange the 2 formations? But now that Calamity Sword wasn't here. No one knew where he went. Or was he secretly preparing? If a fight really breaks out and Master Tribulation and the others lead us into a deadly situation, they will certainly know how to avoid danger. What about us? Everyone shuddered at the thought of this. The consequences would be unimaginable. As long as Xiao Qinyu didn't say anything, no one would choose to fight with Calamity at this time. Theoretically, Calamity Sword was their #1 enemy. But at this moment, the wealth of the Li clan was in their hands. What was the purpose of fighting? Who would put aside the benefits that they had already obtained and risk their lives to fight an unrelated yet abnormally powerful and mysterious enemy? Wouldn't that be stupid? Besides, that poison Dr. Wu Jueqing was still watching them. They were obviously on the same side. Who would dare to go against him? Of course, we don't dare to take Sword Master's threat lightly. Qin Jinlong said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, but this time, Lord Sword Master has exposed himself too early. What he meant was that even if they couldn't kill you now, it would be easy for all the big clans in the world to kill 1 or 2 of you. Chu Yang said coldly, "You mean, We can't let the women and children of the Li clan go? Qin Jianlong hesitated and said loudly, that's right. If there was a day in the future when Lord Swordmaster attacked the Qin clan, he could also destroy them. Don't let anyone go. Chu Yang said lightly, you must remember what you said. Today's cause will be tomorrow's effect. Qin Jianlong said proudly, my words are like the wind. Then he sneered, we'll go to the base camp of the Li clan immediately. Swordmaster, do you want to go with us? See how we kill people? Chu Yang said coldly, I'll see. I'll definitely take a good look. Qin Jianlong laughed and turned to leave. Let's go. Let's go. Everyone's going to get rich. The Alliance army was excited. Everyone followed him and the sleigh started moving slowly. Xiao Qinyu was sitting inside. He clearly heard that the Master of Calamity Sword was outside, but he didn't know why. At this moment, his mind was so tired that he couldn't even get angry. Even now, Xiao Qinyu was still immersed in the past, unable to extricate himself from it. Boss, are we really not going to do anything? Gu Duxing frowned. How can we not do anything? Chu Yang smiled lightly. But there's still a bird below. We still need to dig it out first. Normally, as long as this sentence was said, everyone would definitely want to laugh. Jesting was a matter of course and GMO had to play a trick. As for whether to ridicule a certain bird in advance, such as stripping a pig, exposing its entire bird or something like that, it would depend on how hot the atmosphere was. However, they had just gone through such a desperate battle. Even though they hadn't personally participated in it, they still felt a lot of emotions. At this moment, no one could laugh. Even someone as humorous as GMO was silent at this moment. Their hearts were very heavy. Chu Yang sighed. He wanted to liven up the atmosphere, but he didn't think that if even he was depressed, how could the atmosphere be livened up? The Alliance army had already retreated. It was completely quiet here now. Looking at the blood mist in the air that hadn't dissipated completely, everyone was very depressed. The atmosphere was very heavy. Li Chuanbo was dead. And he was so dead. This made all the brothers feel a little complicated. Whether the Li clan had committed all kinds of evil and was deranged, whether they deserved to die or not, this was a matter of opinion. But Li Chuanbo, this old man, was someone that everyone respected. And it was the kind of respect that came from the bottom of their hearts. This old man could be called a hero or even a perfect hero. This was something that everyone had long agreed on. But no one would have thought that he would die without paying any price today. He died so cleanly that he felt at ease. But on second thought, if Li Chuanbo didn't die like this, then he really wouldn't be Li Chuanbo. If he had self-destructed in the end to pay the price, then wouldn't it be more worthwhile for him to choose to live on with humiliation and take revenge endlessly? A middle-grade supreme martial artist was not something that could be surrounded and annihilated by humans. Even someone as strong as Xiao Qinyu couldn't stop Li Chuanbo, who was fully focused on escaping. Even if there were many experts of the same level as Xiao Qinyu, the result would still be the same. In order to truly kill a middle-grade supreme martial artist, one must have extremely special means or have domineering strength that exceeded the limits of a middle-grade supreme martial artist. For example, only Zi Sheqing could possibly kill a middle-grade supreme martial artist. Otherwise, don't even think about it. But Li Chuanbo was Li Chuanbo after all. He didn't have such a choice. Although he was already disappointed in this world, he still had his own bottom line. Although he no longer believed in any emotions, he still believed in and abided by his own feelings and perseverance. All the brothers sighed in unison. Impressive, Li Chuanbo. Suddenly there was a tremor beneath their feet. A faint fluctuation filled this extremely flat ground with a kind of magical rhythm at this moment. It was Mo Qianji removing the effects of the triple light formation. Hundreds of millions of purple crystals instantly turned into dust. And right at this moment, somewhere underground, there was a sudden explosion. A thin and small figure shot up into the sky at least several thousand feet high. Panting heavily, he cursed angrily, "Motherfucker, I almost suffocated to death." The thin and small figure was naturally Rui Badong, a certain naked bird. It was inevitable that he would be naked. After all, he had entered a place of lava. What kind of clothes could withstand the temperature of the lava? It must be said that this Lord Phoenix was very unlucky. It was just as Gu Duxing had said. When it excitedly rushed into the lava, it didn't consider that this place was derived from the Three Lights Great Array. So, it was naturally inside the Three Lights Great Array. Even after he rushed in, he didn't think about this. He only focused on increasing his strength, wholeheartedly and greedily absorbing the heat of the lava and turning it into his own phoenix vital essence. Chapter 1548. Once he entered the magma, Rui Badong immediately felt an endless stream of pure heat surging into his body. The phoenix true origin filled up at a rapid speed. Rui Badong felt an infinite sense of happiness. It was all an increase in strength, but this was much more comfortable than the phoenix nirvana, but he also knew that he didn't have much time. If he delayed and waited for the magma to cool down, it would be a huge waste. Especially since this was a rare opportunity, how could he miss it? Therefore he started to absorb with all his might. Apart from absorbing with all his might, he didn't care about anything else. In the end, it seemed that even the last bit of heat was absorbed into his body. Only then did he feel satisfied that he didn't miss this God-given opportunity. At this moment, he could clearly feel that his cultivation had risen from the supreme grade to the peak of the 7th grade. It seemed that he was only a step away from breaking through to the 8th grade. Rui Badong almost couldn't hold back his laughter. This was really too good. He was now the strongest among all the brothers, even above Boss Chu. Who else who wasn't convinced? The high-spirited Rui Badong couldn't wait to return to his brothers and show off to them. How could he have such a day? But then Rui Badong realized that he seemed to have rejoiced too early. His cultivation had indeed improved and by a lot, but he was trapped underground and couldn't get out. The most tragic thing was that he was trapped alive in a rock formed by magma. Rui Badong used all his strength, but he couldn't move at all. Suddenly he remembered that this was Mo Tianji's 3 lights formation. In an instant he cried and almost broke down. Even if Rui Badong was really an 8th grade supreme, he couldn't move the ground that had mutated because of the 3 lights formation, not to mention that he was almost there. How could I forget such an important thing? At that moment Rui Badong was filled with regret. It was a good thing to be able to raise his cultivation, but to be trapped and suffocated to death because of it was very bad. What was this? His brother stayed underground for such a long time. When the battle ended and Mo Tianji unsealed the 3 lights formation, Rui Badong was really about to suffocate to death. No matter how powerful the Phoenix Nirvana was, it couldn't be without air. There was no air underground. If it wasn't for the great improvement in his cultivation that greatly extended the time he could hold his breath, this bird would be the first accidental death in history. Furthermore, he had suffocated himself to death. With great difficulty he finally managed to escape. He rushed out impatiently and swaggered around in the air for 7 or 8 rounds before landing. With a dark face he complained, "Why did you take so long to open the formation? I almost suffocated to death." Mo Tianji snorted and gave this 7th grade supreme martial artist a tight slap. "You still have the cheek to say that? My Starlight Grand Array and Moonlight Grand Array were destroyed because of you. What an incompetent fellow." Rui Badong rubbed his head and lowered his head, daring to be angry but not daring to speak. "Stop showing off your bird. Hurry up and find some clothes to wear. Let's go quickly. The women and children of the Li clan, and hundreds of thousands of them. Are we really going to watch them get slaughtered?" Xu Yang waved his hand and urged him. "Yes, let's go." All of the brothers immediately remembered. They rushed out as if they were flying, leaving a certain bird alone in its original place. Rui Badong was stunned where he was. Elder was a peak 7th grade supreme martial artist. How could no one have noticed such a huge improvement in Elder? No one even complimented him. Elder was now the number 1 among all the brothers. What did Boss say just now? "Dizzy bird, what dizzy bird?" Just as he was reciting, a cool breeze blew past. Rui Badong shuddered. Why was it so cold down there? He looked down. "Help, where are my clothes? Why are they naked?" Elder was still spinning in the air 7 or 8 times just now. His face had been fucking thrown all the way to his grandmother's house. On the other side, the troops of the Allied forces were moving forward rapidly, like a pack of hungry wolves, rushing toward a flock of white, delicious, and completely defenseless lambs. The truth was indeed so. It was just that it was bloodier, crueler, more cold-blooded, more greedy, and more evidence of the dark side of humans. Everyone was thinking cruelly and greedily. The long-term accumulation of more than 10,000 years, the mountainous wealth, the beautiful women of the Li clan, the blood that was about to splatter, the beautiful pleading voices. There were people of the Li clan that was once as famous as us. Now, today, in the next moment, they will completely fall under our butcher's knife. They won't have much resistance anymore. In fact, they may not even have any resistance at all. We can do whatever we want. The pleasure of being the meat on someone else's chopping block. With this thought, a heartfelt pleasure rose in his heart. He really couldn't wait for that moment to come. However, just as everyone was moving quickly, another troop of troops of the Allied forces suddenly stopped. Everyone who was moving forward was rather confused. Could there be some unexpected change? Enemy attack? They didn't notice anything. Everyone, now that the situation is settled, the remnants of the Li clan are no longer a threat. We are injured and exhausted, unable to bear the burden and urgently need to recuperate. We won't be participating in the later operations and will take our leave here. Lan Mafeng walked out and cupped his fists to bid farewell. The Lan clan has been entrusted by the 5th Commander-in-Chief to escort the Commander-in-Chief back to the south. The Lan clan is in decline now, and we contributed very little in this decisive battle. The Li clan's wealth should naturally belong to those who contributed. The Lan clan knows that we are not qualified to touch it. As for the share that we originally agreed upon, we might as well give it to all of you. The mountains are high and the rivers are long, may we meet again. Qin Jianlong and the others looked at Lan Mafeng suspiciously. Was this guy brainless? Or did he have enzymes in his brain? Farewell. Lan Mafeng and the others turned to leave. Diwu Qingru walked out from the crowd, his expression rather bleak and somewhat helpless. With a light laugh he said, Qingru says that I'm the Commander-in-Chief, but since all of you don't mind, I'm just doing it in name. Today's battle is over and there are no more major battles. I just happened to bid farewell to all of you. Please don't take it to heart. Everyone didn't expect Diwu Qingru to leave immediately after accomplishing his mission. For a moment they were so surprised that they were speechless. Diwu Qingru was different from the declining Lan clan. To put it bluntly, in the eyes of the super clans, his scheming role was definitely above that of the Lan clan. All the super clans had even come to a tacit understanding that they could give the Lan clan nothing or less of the Li clan's benefits this time, but they had to give Diwu Qingru a substantial share of the benefits. But he didn't want it either? We've all known each other for a while. Before I leave, I'll give all of you a piece of advice. Diwu Qingru's expression changed a little. He said in a low voice, Don't be too overboard. When you're complacent, you have to be cautious. Before you improve, you have a steel knife. Everyone was silent. When you've received a favor, you should retreat first. When you're complacent, you can rest. Diwu Qingru breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, Farewell. Have a safe journey, Commander-in-Chief. We'll meet again. Qin Jianlong and the others also breathed a sigh of relief. If Diwu Qingru was still around, they really wouldn't know how to divide the benefits given to him. If they gave too much, everyone would naturally be unhappy. If they gave too little, it would be Diwu Qingru who would be unhappy. If such a wise man bore a grudge against them, it would definitely not be a wonderful thing. It was good that he left just like that. Anyway, they wouldn't need him anymore. At least they wouldn't need him for now. Diwu Qingru waved his hand. He walked towards Xiao Qinyu's sleigh and said his goodbyes. Then, his sleeves fluttered as he stood in the wilderness for a while. Finally he let out a long sigh. Then he boarded another sleigh and left in silence. The members of the super clans looked conflicted. After a long time, 70 to 80 people actually stepped out from the crowd and said, Commander-in-Chief Diwu has done us a great favor. Now that he's returning to the south, we have no choice but to send him off. The benefits here are ultimately worldly possessions. We won't take them. Everyone will meet again in the future. Cupping their fists, they chased after him. Some more people stepped out and cupped their fists to bid farewell. With people leaving one after another, there were actually less than 200 people left in an instant. If Lan Mafeng and the 80-odd people from the Lan clan were included, it was basically equivalent to almost 300 experts leaving at once. Qin Jianlong stomped his feet and snorted. A bunch of idiots. Giving away the benefits that are already in their hands. They don't care, but we do. Let's go. They continued to head north. Although they lost almost 300 people out of nowhere, to this team of 5,000 people now, losing 300 people was just a drop in the ocean. But it also didn't affect the overall situation and didn't affect their overall strength. On the snowy ground, a group of people headed north rapidly while another small group headed south rapidly. In just a moment they couldn't see each other anymore. Commander-in-Chief, why are you leaving at this time? You're about to enter a treasure mountain but return empty-handed? Asked a low voice on the snowy ground. A soft voice said, Since we can't get anything, isn't it the same whether we leave earlier or later? Can't get anything? The voice from earlier was shocked. The Li clan has already been wiped out. How can their 10,000 years of accumulation be insignificant? Wealth is just a small matter. Why can't we get anything? Diwu Qingru smiled helplessly. There are still women and children of the Li clan there. There may be quite a number of women and children in the Li clan, but what kind of combat power can they have? They naturally don't have combat power, but the Tribulation Sword Master does. Diwu Qingru said softly, the Tribulation Sword Master Chu Yang will never allow them to hurt women and children wantonly. If they had promised to only take wealth and not hurt women and children, Chu Yang might not have stopped them. But they have already said that they will hurt women and children and massacre the Li clan. Then, that place is about to become hell. Is it possible with just the Tribulation Sword Master and those few people? Asked Lan Mofeng doubtfully. Remove the last word. Maybe just the Tribulation Sword Master alone is enough, said Diwu Qingru calmly. I'm not talking about his strength but his influence. Lan Mofeng sucked in a breath of cold air. If Chu Yang's side can gain the upper hand and force them to retreat or kill all of these few thousand people, nothing will happen. But if Chu Yang and the rest are at a disadvantage after a great battle, the women and children of the Li clan will still be doomed in the end. As for the difficulty, I'm sure that when the remaining few clans are wiped out by the Tribulation Sword Master, they will also face the same tragic fate of being wiped out. Chapter 1549. The Tribulation Sword Master is so powerful? Does he have the ability to transcend heaven and earth? Perhaps this is the will of the heavens. The will of the heavens favors the Tribulation lineage. The Tribulation Sword Master's current strength may not be among the top, but his influence is big enough. Do you think that Wu Jueqing stayed here just to watch the show? Yes, there's still the poison doctor Wu Jueqing. With him around, even if Tribulation is defeated, there's still room for retreat. Diwu Qingru sneered. You're thinking too simply. Wu Jueqing is not Tribulation's only trump card. Although Wu Jueqing's strength is astonishing, he's just one person after all. Even if he's intimidating enough, there's still a limit. If the big clans are really willing to pay the price, they still have the ability to destroy him. He smiled for some unknown reason. You high-level supreme martial artists are overly confident in your own divine senses and don't seek help from outsiders. But I've long sensed the murderous intent in the Northeast. There's clearly a large number of top experts lying in ambush there, and there's definitely a lot of them. And the Northeast is where the 3 Stars Divine Clan is. Chu Yang and the others are relatively weak, but they still appear openly. They must have something to rely on. Therefore, I'm sure that there must be reinforcements from the Tribulation Sword Master in the Northeast, and they're super powerful. Once we cross the line, we'll have to face a cruel battle. I don't have any confidence in this battle. There's even the risk of being destroyed. Therefore, we must leave in advance. Because Qin Jianlong and the others are already bloodthirsty. They definitely won't care about the line, especially the line of others. Therefore, this battle is already unavoidable. Once these people are all wiped out, it'll be a good thing for us. What I'm afraid of now is that they aren't all wiped out. Then, the big clans will really be completely wiped out from the continent. The Tribulation Sword Master Chu Yang will definitely kill everyone who belongs to the big clans very seriously. Diwu Qingru heaved a long sigh. Is this Tribulation Sword Master Chu Yang even scarier than that Emo Tianji? Lan Mofeng asked in disbelief. These few days his dealings with Emo Tianji had been full of twists and turns. Lan Mofeng had long regarded Emo Tianji as a scary demon. At this moment, when he heard Diwu Qingru's words, he couldn't help but feel somewhat unconvinced. He did not believe that the Master of Calamity Sword could be more terrifying than Emo Tianji. The terrifying thing about the Calamity Sword Master is his bottom line. If you cross his bottom line, he won't talk about bottom lines with you. That's when the real bloodbath begins. Diwu Qingru smiled faintly. Emo Tianji is only one of the tribulations and Chu Yang is the master of the tribulations. Chu Yang is definitely several times more terrifying than Emo Tianji, the brain of the tribulations. Hiss, Lan Mofeng sucked in a breath of cold air abruptly. He had never doubted Diwu Qingru's judgment. Diwu Qingru had never made a wrong judgment before. In short, we must leave quickly. We must leave as fast as we can. Diwu Qingru's eyes were profound. We must leave the northwest region as soon as possible. The group sped up again. Diwu Qingru's face was full of satisfaction as he looked at the people who were following behind him. Diwu Qingru didn't care about how many people from the great clans had died in the War of the Northwest. What he cared about was how much he had gained. From the looks of it now, it seemed to have greatly exceeded his expectations. He still had his own charisma. It was already good enough that he had been able to rope in those people from the Lan clan, but now there were 200 more people. 200 supreme martial artists. This was a rather huge force. Diwu Qingru had always had his own plans. He also had his own considerations when selecting people. The great clans had always had the habit of keeping thugs and outsiders. And these people were usually already rooted in the great clans. Their relatives and daughters were all living with their respective clans. Diwu Qingru didn't dare to lay his hands on these people, nor could he afford to do so. But there were also some people who were all alone or whose family members had all died, or who didn't care about the burden of a family and were engrossed in cultivation. This group of people didn't have very strong restraints from their respective clans. They were basically free people. The most important point was that because these people had no ties to themselves, their respective clans weren't that easy to deal with in terms of ordering them around. Therefore they were easily overlooked in their respective clans. And Diwu Qingru's main target was this group of people. Time and time again, the subtle gestures of goodwill, the ingenious arrangements of taking care of them through life and death battles, and the various hints given, allowed these people to survive time and time again in the bloody battles. Diwu Qingru had put in too much effort for this. It was simply incalculable. And now, when he left, these people were willing to follow him. This was his biggest gain from this trip. They said that they were escorting him back to the south, but everyone knew that this was just an excuse. Once he left, there was no turning back. Everyone had ambition, but they were also greedy for life and afraid of death. This was a common trait of humans. Following an invincible commander who didn't fall into danger and following a clan that had been rotten for thousands of years but was still high and mighty. These were two completely different things. There was another important point. The rise of the Diwu clan was now unstoppable. If they followed him now, they would be the first-generation elders of the clan in the future. How could the position of a thug in other clans be comparable to this? No one was confused. In the future, Qingru will live and die with all of you. Diwu Qingru took a deep breath and said solemnly, whether it's a picturesque landscape or a dead end, we will walk through it together. We are willing to build a great cause and glory together with clan leader. Everyone shouted in unison. There was some excitement in their voices. At this moment they were already very far away from the group. Naturally, they didn't need to call him Commander-in-Chief Diwu anymore. Moreover, although Diwu Qingru's words were simple, it made one thing clear. We will advance and retreat together and share weal and woe together. This was an attitude. It was also the respect that everyone wanted to get the most. Diwu Qingru nodded warmly. Let's go. This is already the world of the Tribulation Sword Master. Everyone was shocked. Already? Is it really so serious? Definitely. Diwu Qingru laughed. Let's wait and see. As they laughed, the group quickly disappeared in the direction of the south. At this moment, the sound of the explosion in the distance had completely disappeared. The people of the Li clan were still looking at each other at the door, hoping for a miracle to happen, hoping to see their loved ones return in triumph. But they didn't know that the miracle didn't happen. Their loved ones would never come back. In the middle was a white-haired old lady. She leaned on a walking stick and looked at the road. Her face was expressionless. Her white hair fluttered in the wind, but there was an indescribable desolation. Suddenly there was the sound of running. Then a figure rolling and crawling appeared in everyone's sight. Everyone was in an uproar, but no one said anything. Save me. Come and save me. That person was running and tripping as he screamed miserably. If there was someone chasing after him, it would be reasonable for him to lose his life at any time. But the problem was, there was no one chasing after him. But he was running as if he could lose his life at any time. Everyone was from the martial world. They could tell at a glance that this person was scared out of his wits. And this person was actually the young master of the Li clan, Li Ju. For a moment, everyone was a little surprised. What kind of situation was this? What kind of battle could scare the usually elegant and confident Grand Duke to this extent? Li Ju. There was an inexplicable sadness in the old lady's eyes. She slammed her walking stick on the ground and said, "What happened in front? You're behaving like this, where is your decency? Where are the others?" Li Ju ran over in a panic. He said as if his soul had left his body, "Grandma, they're all dead, all dead. Save me, I'm dying too." The white-haired old lady was the biological mother of the current clan master of the Li clan, Li Wubua. She was also Li Ju's biological grandmother. When she heard the words all dead, her face couldn't help but turn pale. Her body swayed and she said in a low voice, "All dead? Are they all dead?" Li Ju suddenly flew into a rage. "What are you all still standing there for? Come and save me. I'm your Grand Duke, your young master. I'm the future clan master of the Li clan. Come and save me. Bastard." The old lady's body swayed. She was so angry that her eyes turned black. "If they're all dead, why aren't you dead? How did you survive? Did you survive just to embarrass yourself? Everyone's eyes were filled with suspicion. Li Ju's lips were green and his face was pale. His face was almost devoid of color. For some reason he suddenly screamed, "It hurts so much." Woo woo. It was as if there were thousands of knives and swords on his body. It was also as if there were hundreds of palms attacking him. His voice was so shrill that it was horrifying. However, the women and children of the Li clan all looked at him with disdain. No one paid any attention to him. There was only one thought in their hearts: heartache. Their family members had all sacrificed themselves, and the one left behind was such a good-for-nothing? Li Ju screamed at the top of his lungs. He didn't know why, but he started to curse again. He complained that no one was paying attention to him. He threatened that he would take revenge once he became the clan lord. He trembled and wanted to treat his own injuries. In fact, his injuries weren't very serious. He hadn't broken his legs or arms. At most, there were a lot of scattered injuries. There were hundreds of wounds all over his body. There were also a lot of burns and blisters. He looked like he was covered in wounds and his flesh was badly mutilated. In reality, they were all superficial wounds. As long as medicine was applied and the wounds were treated, there wouldn't be any major problems. At most, he would feel a little uncomfortable. As for his internal injuries, they were almost non-existent. Chapter 1550. Old Madame Li's face became more and more unpleasant. She really wanted to slap this evil creature to death, but first, Li Ju was the only one alive in front of them. Second, they were still grandfather and grandson. Old Madame Li doted on this grandson, so she really couldn't bear to do it. At this moment, a burst of wild laughter came from afar. "Ah, so everyone is here. Since you've all gathered here, you've saved this old man a lot of effort. Since you're so tactful, I'll definitely let you go on your way happily and reunite with your family." When Li Ju heard this, he immediately lost control again. In a panic, he actually squeezed into the group of women and said incoherently, "They're here, they're here. Who will protect me? Quick, quick, quick. I want to run. Help. Shut up, you bastard." Old Madame Li shouted. Her voice was not loud, but it was very majestic. Hundreds of thousands of people heard the enemy's movements with their own ears. Grief appeared on their faces at the same time. Their last hope was dashed just like that. The enemy had come to the heart of the Li clan. This proved that their own family members had all been killed. Otherwise, why would they come here? How could they come here? However, in addition to their grief, each and every one of them puffed out their chests. There was not the slightest bit of fear. Instead, there was a kind of joy of being free. They went and it would be our turn later. Although we are weak, we are still strong. Li family, even if we die, what is there to fear? People came one after another. Qin Jianlong was in the lead. He was very proud and arrogant. He shouted with his nose in the air, "Tell me, where are the treasures of the Li family? Just hand them over and I will let you die quickly. Don't make yourself suffer. It is not a good feeling. Be smart." Old Madame Li said calmly, "Who are you? Please tell me your name. Although the Li family has never cared about treasures, if you want the Li family's treasures, you have to see if you are qualified." Old Madame Li raised her head. Her white hair was fluttering and her eyes were sharp. She said coldly, "Not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry can take over the Li family's treasure." Qin Jianlong snorted coldly. "Old lady, who are you?" Old Madame Li smiled. "This is the Northwest, the territory of the Li family. This is the Li family. Honey, I'm asking you, who are you?" Qin Jianlong was furious. The Northwest of the Li family? This was the Li family? Perhaps it was still the Li family now, but it might not be the case in a while. The men of the Li family were all dead. Even the patriarch of the Li clan, Li Chuanbua, was dead. Do you think this is still the Li family's territory? You still insist on this question. What a joke. Old Madame Li suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. She said in a shrill but heroic voice, "There are not only men in the Li family but also women. We are also members of the Li family. As long as there is one person with the surname Li, this land will still belong to the Li family." Everyone shouted in unison, "That's right, as long as there is still one person with the surname Li in the Li clan, this land will belong to the Li clan. This is the Li clan." Qin Jianlong guffawed and pointed. "Yes, there seems to be another guy over there. Is he also from the Li clan?" He pointed at Li Ju. Li Ju felt that he had been locked on by someone's divine sense. He was instantly terrified and shouted, "Don't kill me. Save me." Then he turned around and ran away. He actually ran to where there were more people. He didn't care about the difference between men and women and ran further and further away. Seeing this, Qin Jianlong's smile widened. He chuckled and said, I didn't expect the Li clan to still have someone who understands the situation. Someone like him can survive because he knows fear and knows what he can and can't provoke? Do you still think this land belongs to the Li clan? The question was directed at old Madame Li. Old Madame Li said indifferently, let me answer your first question first. It doesn't matter what that bastard's surname is now, but it is destined not to be Li anymore. Because even if he can still live, even if he can live for another 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, the ancestors of the Li clan won't recognize him as Li anymore. He doesn't deserve it. Secondly, this is the Li clan's territory. As long as there is one person in the Li clan, this will never change. Qin Jianlong heard this and became angry. He said fiercely, good, good, good. Since old Madame Li said so, then I will kill everyone with the surname Li and then go search for the treasures. I really don't believe that those treasures can grow wings and fly away. Old Madame Li sneered. You didn't intend to let us go in the first place. Why do you have to be so pretentious? Suddenly there was a shout, the men of the Li clan are all heroes. They will never kneel in front of others and die together. Are the women of the Li clan afraid of death? The men of the Li clan are heroes. The women are also not afraid of anything. They were still shouting in unison. Old Madame Li waved her hand and stopped the shouting. She smiled bitterly. Actually, what's the point of talking so much nonsense? What are we waiting for? Our men are all dead. Are we still going to hesitate here and not reunite? With a roar that sounded like an explosion, the women of the Li family suddenly rushed forward like crazy tigers. Everyone was holding a sword, a knife or other sharp weapons. Everyone was rushing forward without thinking about their own safety. Most of them were weak, but this time they didn't want to kill the enemy. They only wanted to be killed as soon as possible. That was all. Just as Qin Jianlong said, the women of the Li clan had already realized that they were losers. But this realization was definitely not to surrender, but to die. Li Ju was still running for his life. It was as if running for his life was the only thing he could do. Compared to these white-haired and beautiful women and children, this Li clan's Grand Duke was as detestable as a pile of dung. No, feces could be eaten by dogs, but he couldn't even be bothered to care about dogs. At this moment, the 120,000 men who had stayed behind earlier all let out a cry and rushed forward at the same time. Kill. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. Qin Jianlong's eyes were red. He raised his head and shouted, Kill. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. Wash the northwest with blood. Cut the weeds and dig up the roots. Don't leave any future troubles. Thousands of experts also rushed forward. Compared to the Li clan in front of them, these people were like a group of regular soldiers who had been through a lot of killing. Facing a group of babies who were almost defenseless, they were waving the cruelest butcher's knife. This was a massacre without any resistance at all. There was no resistance at all. It was a massacre without any resistance at all. With a swing of the sword, dozens of people fell down screaming at the same time. Fresh blood soared into the sky. In a moment, blood flowed like a river. Qin Jianlong's face revealed a trace of coldness. He chased after Li Ju. This Grand Duke of the Li clan was a rare commodity worth hoarding. At the very least, he should know the location of the Li clan's treasure trove. Also, his greatest characteristic was his fear of death. This was the most outstanding trait of his enemies. As his divine sense locked onto Li Ju, he sped up and chased after him. Li Ju, who was like a frightened rabbit, became even more panicked. He rolled and crawled and didn't know what to say. He was so shrill that his voice was hoarse. Save me, save me, save me. Father, mother, my mother? Little one, it's useless for you to shout now. Qin Jianlong flew up and grabbed him with one hand. Li Ju suddenly thought of something at this moment. Escape? Where should I escape to? Where should I escape to? Father? Yes, didn't father set up something? There's a safe place, there's a place, right? Badian? Badian. Quick. Li Ju began to chant incoherently in his heart. He was grasping at his last life-saving straw. Right now, Li Ba Tian was naturally inside the secret formation that Mo Tianji had set up. He was sitting unusually quietly. It was very quiet inside. Not a single one of his 7,000 brothers was missing. Everyone was silent. No one knew if they could really escape by hiding in this place. According to Mo Tianji's original intention, he wanted to leave some space so that there would be some room to maneuver. However, the Li clan didn't even have enough space for 7,000 people. How could there be any space? Therefore, this place was really filled with 7,000 people. However, at this moment, Li Ba Tian suddenly received Li Ju's call from outside. He also received a request to activate the different bodies united. Li Ba Tian hesitated for a moment before he immediately activated the secret technique. He had already made it clear that once that time came, it would be a dangerous moment that couldn't be delayed any longer. He could only activate it immediately. Qin Jianlong waved his sword and sent dozens of Li clan members flying. He opened his hand and grabbed Li Ju by the back of his shirt. He lifted him up like he was lifting a chicken. At this moment, Li Ju didn't even know how to struggle. He was just about to interrogate him when he suddenly felt a dense fluctuation in the air. Li Ju, who he had caught in his hand, suddenly disappeared. Furthermore, he had disappeared without a trace. There was only a ripping sound as a piece of cloth hung in his hand. Something strange happened. Qin Jianlong couldn't help but cry out. He was stunned on the spot. Following this, he felt a purple light suddenly appear not far away. There was another series of light projections that shot into the sky. There was a loud boom. Countless people were sent flying by the shockwaves from the explosion. Snow and dust filled the air and flew in all directions. As the snow and dust settled, everyone present was stunned. Behind the crowd, a large empty space appeared out of nowhere. There were at least a few thousand people on the empty space. The young men were terrified as they looked over. They didn't know what to do at all. The Alliance army was still all right. Although there were a few thousand more people on the other side, they were all low-leveled martial artists. They weren't as hard to kill as the women. However, what was going on? Was this an ambush? A suicidal ambush? Or was it a secret sanctuary? But why would they be exposed when the army was pressing down on them? As for the women and children of the Li clan, all of them had white hair and beautiful faces. They instantly broke down. Weren't those people their children? Every single one of them was a familiar face. Every single one of them was the most promising and talented disciple in their respective clans. How did they appear out of nowhere? Weren't they taken away by the elder to be taught secret techniques? Weren't they supposed to be in some secret safe place? How did this happen? What happened? The battlefield fell silent. Li Ju and Li Ba Tian were also stunned. The two of them sat in the middle in a daze and looked at the situation outside. Their brains seemed to have frozen. Chapter 1551. Book 7, Chapter 840, Sinful. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Li Ju and Li Ba Tian felt a chill run down their spines. They didn't expect the formation to be at its limit. At this moment, Li Ba Tian was filled with regret. What's going on? A white-haired old lady dashed over, her body drenched in blood. She interrogated Li Ju and Li Ba Tian. She was the one with the highest cultivation among the women and children. She was also the widow of one of the Li family's ancestors. She was usually quiet and didn't participate in the family's affairs. However, she was the calmest person here. Li Ju was outside, but he suddenly appeared in the empty space that had appeared out of nowhere. This was very strange. Furthermore, it was because of him that this place was exposed. There was no trace of it before this. This was clearly a secret hiding place, but it was exposed for some reason. All the questions pointed to Li Ju. It was definitely related to Li Ju. At this moment, she gritted her teeth as she questioned Li Ju. This is a protective formation. Li Ba Tian also knew that he had gotten himself into big trouble at this moment. He subconsciously explained everything that had happened from the very beginning. Everyone was stunned at the same time. All the women were in despair. This was the first time they were truly in despair. According to what you said, these people were the younger generation that the family had intentionally hidden. They had bloodline powers that could have escaped. But now, it was destroyed by Li Ju's selfishness? Following this question, tens of thousands of women's gazes turned and focused on Li Ju's face. To a man, the most important thing was his family, his career, and his interests. However, to a woman, the most important thing was always her child. This was more important than anything else. At this moment, they knew that their child had a great chance of surviving, but had been harmed by Li Ju, a selfish bastard. Their anger could make the sky collapse. At this moment, everyone was gnashing their teeth. They wanted nothing more than to bite Li Ju to death, bite him to death. I'm afraid that's what happened. So this is what happened. The old lady with the highest status said helplessly, I heard the men say that no one is allowed to come out. Now, it's obvious that Li Ju used some kind of secret technique to hide in the formation. He wanted to survive, but the formation exploded. A slight mistake in the art of formations can lead to a huge mistake. Li Ju, you bastard, you deserve to die. So many people died, so why didn't you die? You scourge. The hundreds of thousands of people were instantly enraged. This was simply a great hatred that could end one's bloodline. The only thing that could do all of this was the unity of different bodies. In an instant, everyone understood. They glared at Li Ju and Li Ba Tian with hatred as they gritted their teeth. Damn people. The Li clan was already at the end of the road, yet these two brothers still wanted to play such tricks and harm the entire clan. Now the entire clan had been killed, completely wiped out. On the other side, Qin Jianlong was also confused, but his cultivation was superb, and he had already locked onto the core of the incident with his divine sense, so he understood the general situation of the matter. Naturally, he understood the whole story and he couldn't help but feel like a big pie had fallen from the sky. Today was really the old man's lucky day. He originally wanted to catch a coward so that he could find the treasure, but he didn't expect to catch a bunch of hidden scourges. He laughed out loud, "Wonderful, wonderful. I was just worried that if I didn't remove the roots they would grow again. Li Ju, you've really helped me a lot. I definitely won't kill you. You're my benefactor, ha." As soon as she smiled, the women of the Li family all felt their old and new hatred. Suddenly they abandoned the enemy and rushed over like crazy. "You damned bastard." Their voices changed as they cursed. Li Ju and Li Ba Tian were dragged out of the crowd. Then, a woman in her 40s fiercely pounced on Li Ju. She fiercely bit Li Ju's neck and tore off a piece of flesh. Her mouth was full of blood. She screamed in despair, "I want to eat you. You bastard. You killed my son." Another woman also charged forward with tears on her face. She bit Li Ju's neck with her snow-white teeth. "Bastard. I'm going to eat you." Following this, countless women charged forward. They all used their teeth to bite Li Ju and Li Ba Tian. Li Ju was so terrified that his eyes turned white. He only had time to say one sentence, "Save me. Hurry up and save me. Activate the heavenly net escape." In the next moment he was drowned by the crowd. Li Ba Tian only had time to defend himself before he was drowned by the crowd. The same thing happened to him. Li Ba Tian was completely wronged. He was completely dragged down by Li Ju. But now, who cared whether he was wronged or not? These women were so crazy that even the elites of the allied forces felt a chill run down their spines when they saw it. Li Ju and Li Ba Tian's cries for mercy didn't stop. They became softer and softer until they finally stopped. These women had really gone mad. They had used their teeth to gnaw Li Ju and Li Ba Tian until they were nothing more than bones. From this, it could be seen just how deep the hatred in his heart was and how deep the hatred was. There was a saying that one could eat someone's flesh and sleep on their skin if they wanted to. It was rare to see this with one's own eyes. Today they witnessed with their own eyes what it meant to eat someone's flesh. As for sleeping on someone's skin, they still needed a chance because they had eaten everything. The supreme martial artists could only watch from the side. They didn't dare to interfere. Some of them even trembled as if they were the ones being gnawed on. However, they completely forgot that the power that he possessed wasn't something that these women could touch. No one would have thought that Li Ju and Li Ba Tian would end up like this. This was how they died. They were bitten to death by a group of women. At this moment, everyone in the Li family was in a state of extreme madness and despair. They knew that their entire family was about to be destroyed, so they weren't very excited. Death was already a foregone conclusion. What was there to be excited about? However, they suddenly heard that their children could survive. Furthermore, it was a very effective method. Their hopes were magnified. Their children and descendants could live on. Even if they died, they would be comforted. This ending was already much better than having their entire family wiped out. However, at this moment they were exposed to the enemy's butcher's knife. This hatred was higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. It was only when Li Ju and Li Ba Tian were reduced to mere skeletons and many of their bones had been gnawed to pieces that the rage finally dissipated. However, the strong will to fight to the death with the enemy had also dissipated. At this moment, it was as if the backbone of the person had been pulled out of his body. There was no point in persevering. It didn't matter if they lived or died. There was no point in doing so. So what if they could kill more enemies? They couldn't avoid death in the end. They had to die together with their children. There was no more hope. Their hope was destroyed. Their desire to live was destroyed. Everyone seemed to have lost their souls. At this moment they didn't even want to resist. Faced with so many high-level supreme martial artists, even if they gave it their all, they might not be able to kill one. What was the point of resisting? Qin Jianlong raised his hand and shouted coldly, "Everyone attack together. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. From now on, there will be no more Li family in the northwest. There won't be anyone with the surname Li." Everyone agreed at the same time. The butcher's knife was about to be raised again. Suddenly a cold voice said, "Kill them all? Do you think you can do that?" The owner of this voice was the master of the Calamity Sword, Chu Yang. Qin Jianlong was furious. "Master of the Calamity Sword, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. You'll only cause trouble." Chu Yang said plainly, "Everyone has a part in this. If I insist on meddling, what can you do? What trouble can you give this sword master?" Qin Jianlong and the leader of the Zhuge family looked at each other. They could see the joy in each other's eyes. If the master of the Calamity Sword wanted to escape, no one was confident that they could stop him. However, if the master of the Calamity Sword wanted to meddle in other people's business, he wouldn't be able to leave anytime. In that case, the people here could definitely keep the master of the Calamity Sword here forever. As long as they really cared about the women and children of the Li family, these people would be a great hindrance. Under such circumstances, even if Wu Jueqing were to take action, it wouldn't be of much use. Poison didn't have eyes, especially for those women and children who were weak. Once poison was used, they would definitely be the first to die. Therefore, Wu Jueqing would definitely have a lot of scruples. In this way, only a few people would have to face 5,000 high-level martial artists in a life-and-death battle. Even if you had great abilities, what could you do? Suddenly, a cold voice said abruptly, "Everyone take a step back." A thin figure suddenly appeared in the crowd of the Li family. A puff of green smoke rose. The few people at the front of the allied forces suddenly fell down. There were no exceptions. Poison. Everyone retreat. Qin Jianlong was the first to retreat. This figure that suddenly appeared was the poison doctor Wu Jueqing. It was the same poisonous smoke. The Li family was fine when they smelled it, but the allied forces were in a complete mess when they smelled it. Poison didn't have eyes, but Wu Jueqing did. Wu Jueqing's method of using poison was obviously beyond the imagination of ordinary people. He had already reached the level of a great grandmaster where he could do as he pleased. He could poison whoever he wanted. He wouldn't casually implicate others. This was Wu Jueqing's method of using poison. With just a puff of green smoke as a barrier, he actually separated the Li family from the allied forces. "Elder Wu, are you sure you want to make things difficult for us by doing this?" Xiao Qinyu sat on the snow sleigh and asked cautiously. If he could avoid becoming enemies with Wu Jueqing, it was better not to. After all, the implications were too great. Chapter 1552. Chu Yang replied with a smile, "Look at what you're saying. The choice is all up to you. It's not that we want to make things difficult for you. We just want to ask you one thing. These people are your brother's family, descendants, and grandchildren. Are you sure you want to wipe out your brother's family? Completely annihilate your family friends?" Xiao Qinyu said bleakly, "As a loser, I should have the awareness of a loser. Besides, my brother is already dead. If his women and children fall into the hands of others, they will not only be robbed, they will also be bullied and humiliated. However, with this old man here, I can guarantee that they will die a quick death. However, this is already the limit of what this old man can do. Do you really want them to fall from the peak into the depths of the abyss? Tribulation Sword Master, don't use your so-called righteous hat to stop people. Which one of our big clans doesn't have such awareness? The tribulation that happens once every 10,000 years has reappeared. The cycle that happens once every 10,000 years is already proof." Chu Yang sneered and said, "Awareness? Proof. That's bullshit. Why don't you ask these people in front of you? These are all your brother's family and descendants. Ask them if they want to die or live." Xiao Qinyu said, "Even if they want to live, I will never allow them to live on in humiliation. If they don't care about the face of the Li clan in order to survive, they are not qualified to be surnamed Li. If they are not surnamed Li, do I still need to care about the brotherhood?" Chu Yang sneered and said, "Nonsense. It's all your logic. With your ability, you can totally take care of them. The Shao clan has a big business. It's not a problem to feed a few more people. Why do you have to kill them?" GMO and Luo Kadi at the side laughed. This sentence really showed Xiao Qinyu's hypocrisy to the bone. You said that you don't want your brother's family to live in humiliation. Then with your Shao clan's business, what's wrong with feeding a few more people? Besides, they are your brother's family. They are not outsiders to you. But Xiao Qinyu obviously didn't want to. He led people to destroy the Li clan. How could he put the cart before the horse and cut the grass without removing the roots? How could he feed so many people from the Li clan? Moreover, these were all descendants of real enemies. Who knew when they would really cause endless trouble? Although the Shao family was big, how could they afford to raise him? Moreover, he had to be on guard against the backlash at all times. No matter what, it was not feasible. Xiao Qinyu's eyes turned cold. Is Tribulation Sword Master going to protect them? Was he going to enslave them? Or cannon fodder? I maintain. Even if I use them as cannon fodder in the future. Being a slave has nothing to do with you. Because I want them to live. It gave them hope. Chu Yang said sarcastically, at the very least, even if I'm a vile person who takes advantage of other people's perilous situation, I'm doing it in the open. I'm not like you who is full of benevolence, righteousness and morality. You can kill people at any time with a knife in your hand. It's already clear that they want to kill. They want to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots to prevent future troubles. Yet you say that you don't want them to live in humiliation. Xiao Qinyu, do you still have any sense of shame? Xiao Qinyu was displeased and said, Chu Yang, you are the real despicable one. Since he couldn't outtalk Chu Yang, he decided to play the blame game instead. Suddenly, a woman from the Li clan looked at him with disdain. He spat out a mouthful of saliva and said, Xiao Qinyu, you are really disgusting. What qualifications do you have to be on the same level as our elder ancestor? From then on, the group of women started to clamor. A sharp voice said, Xiao Qinyu, it doesn't matter whether we die or not. But the children have to live. You cherish your brotherhood with our elder ancestor so much, so it's not a problem for you to raise a few thousand people? Xiao Qinyu, we can believe you as long as you say it. If these few thousand children can live, then all the adults here can commit suicide in front of you in an instant. We don't want you to overburden us, how about that? Isn't this burden heavy? We don't need you to promise us more, we don't need them to be successful. We just need them to live and breathe. We don't even need them to keep the Li surname. Xiao Qinyu, do you dare to agree? The voices rose one after another. There were please, sarcasm. But there was a common desire that couldn't be concealed. These women wanted their children to live, and they were willing to do anything for it. Even though they hated each other to the extreme, and their grievances were already irreconcilable, they still held on to a slim hope and tried their best. Even though they knew that Xiao Qinyu would definitely not agree, they still gave up their dignity to plead. Even if the hope was slim, they still worked hard for the last chance of survival. As for Chu Yang and the others, they didn't have much hope. Because Chu Yang and the others were really too few in number. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that they were definitely not a match for the Allied forces. But their hearts were still filled with gratitude. Because after all, they had fought for a chance for them to plead. Because their children hadn't died yet. It would be good if they could live a little longer. Xiao Qinyu closed his eyes with an ashen face. How could he dare to agree? How could he agree? Looking at the vengeful gazes of the thousands of youths, if these 7,000 people with good aptitudes were to really mature, what kind of storm would they stir up within the Xiao family? Even if they were to be servants? But who knew when a huge change would occur? How could Xiao Qinyu bear such a risk? Seeing Xiao Qinyu's reaction, everyone understood. Hypocrite. Disgusting. Luo Kadi spat on the ground, full of disdain. Xiao Qinyu, you are really too hypocritical. Xiao Qinyu, you are a hypocrite with a mouth full of righteousness and morality. You still have the cheek to say such beautiful words. Are you still human? A wave of curses came like a tide. It had to be said that when women scolded people, they were definitely much more vicious than men. And they were eloquent and agile. In an instant, all of Xiao Qinyu's grandchildren were cursed at least once. All 8 generations of ancestors were also cursed. There was definitely no one left out. The muscles on Xiao Qinyu's face twitched. Finally, he waved his hand and said, Everyone, attack with all your might. Kill them all. Yes. Qin Jianlong had been waiting for this order for a long time. Wu Jueqing was furious. He said calmly, Xiao Qinyu, looks like you really don't know what's good for you. Since that's the case, I will let you have a fight here. Let's see how many people my poison can kill. Chu Lu'er answered and came out. Her slim figure stood on the snowy ground. With a smile she said, I also have some poison here. With a wave of her hand, another wave of greenish-blue smoke flew out. It merged with Wu Jueqing's smoke. A wave of poisonous smoke suddenly expanded to hundreds of feet long and became a wall of smoke. It stood between the two sides. Chu Yang laughed. The few of us naturally have to teach the 8 super clans a lesson. The situation was suddenly on the verge of breaking out. Xiao Qinyu's pupils contracted. The murderous intent in his eyes grew stronger and stronger. Suddenly there was a long howl. A clear voice said, I am the ruler of the world. I am the king of all rivers and mountains. When this voice came out, the faces of Jia and Jia twisted at the same time. It was not out of fear or wariness but some disgust. This brother is really endless. Will you die if you don't say this when you appear? Even the muscles on Wu Jueqing's face were twitching. A green aura suddenly rose up, and Duke Yu appeared in a carefree and unrestrained manner. He stepped on the green vines in this world of ice and snow, and walked over with lotus blooming with every step he took. He arrived in the middle of the confrontation between the two armies, and smiled in a carefree manner. Brothers, I trust you have been well since we last met? Chuyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dong Wuxiang sighed repeatedly. Mo Chenji looked bitter. GMO shouted, Brother Yu, those two sentences were really too awe-inspiring. Wah! With a puss sound, Duke Yu actually opened up a folding fan in this world of ice and snow. He even slowly fanned himself twice and said in a graceful manner, That's right, that's right. Ao Shiyun and Rui Badong only felt that the bloodline power in their bodies seemed to be attracted by something. Suddenly they let out a long howl at the same time. For a moment, the cries of dragons and phoenixes intertwined in the air. The weather changed. On the opposite side, Xiao Qinyu's eyes revealed a serious expression. He asked in a low voice, What exactly are you that made you a demon? Duke Yu flew into a rage. He turned around abruptly and shouted, Demon? Demon your grandpa. You're the demon. Your whole family is demons. You're always elves, elves. You ignorant country bumpkin. Elves? Xiao Qinyu sighed. For a moment, his face was so hot that he couldn't show his face. He actually treated an elven clansman as a demon. If this were to spread out, his reputation would really resound through the heavens. And it would be the reputation of an idiot. He sighed in his heart. After all, the elves hadn't appeared for 100,000 years. Who would have thought that they were elves? 100,000 years. So it's an elf. The gloominess and anger in Xiao Qinyu's eyes became more and more intense. He said indifferently, No matter what you are. Since you want to protect our enemy, that means you've chosen to be my enemy. Then, all of you shall stay here. The Li clansmen's spirits were suddenly lifted. Suddenly they all stopped breathing. The atmosphere of despair just now was swept away. After all, we still have reinforcements. After all, we still have someone to rely on. Seeing that a great battle was about to break out, suddenly another voice laughed out loud and said, Why is it so lively here? I came out to take a breather and have some fun. To think that I can actually join in the fun. Not bad, really not bad. Little ones, let's go over and take a look. Let these ignorant humans admire the majestic face of this great demon king. The holy king is mighty. There was an earth-shattering sound of flattery. Chapter 1553. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Behind this figure, hundreds of black shadows flew over in an orderly manner. Everyone's pupils shrank at the same time as they looked over in shock. Flying over in an orderly manner, this meant that high-level supreme martial artists. Supreme level and above. Could it be that all of them were supreme martial artists? Then, this was really troublesome. Soaring wind. These people are all high-level supreme martial artists. The pupils of Xiao Qinyu and the others shrank at once, all shocked by their own judgment. If these hundreds of people were all high-level supreme martial artists, then this force was much more terrifying than the current strength of the Alliance army. It was just that they didn't know which side this force that had suddenly appeared belonged to. Xiao Qinyu and the high-level supreme martial artists of the Alliance army all frowned deeply. No matter how hard they racked their brains, they couldn't figure out where exactly this force came from. Throughout the entire continent, they had never heard of such a force existing. Wu Jueqing was equally puzzled. Only Chu Yang and the others had joy in their eyes. They were even a little annoyed and depressed. Damn it, this bastard is finally here. That stretch of black fog drifted here and there. After a few twists and turns, it finally arrived in front of them. An unprecedented murderous aura suddenly engulfed the whole place. The black fog gradually dissipated and a stern black shadow appeared in the air. Standing in the wind, he had the aura of a ruler descending upon the world. Behind him was an old man who was as round as a drum. With a flip of his hands, he brought out a chair from somewhere and then placed it in the air. This chair actually stayed in place in the air just like that. It was actually the technique of controlling objects in the air. That person from earlier let out 3 boastful ha-ha-ha laughs as though he was performing in an opera. Then, he took 2 steps forward with a majestic gait, walked to the front of the chair, and sat down on it in an ostentatious manner. At the same time he crossed his legs and even picked his nose. Then he tilted his head and asked, "Guigu, I'm very handsome today, right?" Guigu, who was at the side, looked up into the sky and said expressionlessly, "You're very handsome." That person laughed out loud and shouted, "Those below, old man, tell me, am I handsome today?" The moment this trademark sentence came out, Chu Yang and the others all felt their stomachs hurt. This wasn't just Tan Tan's trademark, it was also his one and only way to stir up trouble. As long as the Demon King Tan wanted to stir up trouble, once the sentence came out, there really wasn't anything that couldn't be stirred up trouble. Tan's finger, and his target was Chen Jianlong. That person's way of speaking, Chu Yang in translation. It was hard to believe that there was anyone more arrogant and in that person who could be more than this person. Chen Jianlong raised his head in the direction of the voice, only to see that person slumped on that chair that was suspended in midair like a pile of dung. He didn't seem to be sitting properly and his appearance was even weirder. One of his eyebrows was pointing to the sky while the other was pointing to the ground. One of his eyes was big while the other was small, one was round while the other was triangular. The triangular eyes were big and sharp while the round eyes were small and flat. He had a bulbous nose and even his nostrils were square while the other was round. There was also a huge mouth that was actually crooked. In short, all the incongruous appearances that a person could be found on this fellow's face. Just looking at his face was already enough to make one feel like they were going to go crazy at any time. A person like this was actually asking him if he was handsome or not. What the heck, how could you have the nerve to ask that? Is that appearance of yours even remotely related to the word handsome? Isn't it? Chen Jianlong was cursing in his heart, but his mouth was still smiling as he said, "Handsome, you're really very handsome. I just don't know who your excellency is." Chen Jianlong was a sinister and arrogant person, but he was also somewhat clever. He was used to paying respect to the high and stepping on the low. One shouldn't look at the extremely shabby appearance of this person in front of him. However, this shabby guy was obviously the leader of this group. So, even if he was unwilling in his heart, he still had to flatter him with a face full of joy. Moreover, he had to use words to inquire about the other party's background. We can despise a person for being despicable, shameless, vulgar, and despicable. But we can't underestimate that person's experience. Chen Jianlong's character may not be desirable, but his mentality of being able to submit and stand tall was still worth learning from. Xiao Chen, you couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "3 stars divine clan?" This clan's name had once shaken the entire upper 3 heavens. It was almost a taboo that people didn't want to mention. Chen Jianlong and the others trembled all over. They all knew that Xiao Qinyu had thousands of years of experience. He should have seen some clues. Everyone looked over and saw that each of these people had an unusually obvious mark on their forehead. Some were in the shape of the sun, some were in the shape of the crescent moon, and some were in the shape of starlight. These marks were naturally grown on their foreheads. They weren't formed later. The group of people instantly came to a realization. It turned out that this group of people was indeed the legendary 3 Stars Divine Clan. But why did these people appear here? Coincidence? No one would believe this answer even if they were beaten to death. What did they want to do by suddenly coming here? Did they want a share of the loot or did they want to be enemies with the Allied forces? Based on the strength that this group of people had shown so far, if they only wanted a share of the loot, then it was fine. At most they would give them a few melons or 2 dates. But if they absolutely wanted to be enemies, then the situation was a little bad. There was Tribulation Sword Master, Tribulation Brothers, Wu Jucheng and his disciple inside. There was the 3 Stars Divine Clan outside. Even if they could deal with the pincer attack, they would have to pay a high price. Everyone in the Allied forces was thinking, but then they heard the person who asked the question. He was obviously the leader and the ugly guy who had a ridiculously large frame. He was furious. He pointed at Chen Jianlong and roared, "Bastard old thing. Do you fucking want to die? How dare you treat me like this?" Chen Jianlong was stunned. And what's wrong? What did I say? He couldn't help but be furious. You ugly guy just asked me if I was handsome. I didn't want to complicate things, so I went against my conscience and said that you were handsome. You actually got angry? Do you want me to tell you the truth? This is really outrageous. You're really preposterous. Tan Tan angrily said, I condescended to ask you if I was handsome or not. I gave you a lot of face. But you didn't know how to appreciate my kindness. Instead, you perfunctorily answered my question. That sentence of yours clearly went against your conscience. Now I'll give you another chance. I'll ask you if I'm handsome or not. Chen Jianlong was startled when he heard this. Could it be that this guy is self-aware and wants to hear the truth? So, he's not happy to be praised for being handsome? That's easy to handle. Therefore, he heaved a sigh of relief and said, I was being polite a moment ago. Your Excellency is indeed not handsome. In fact, you're not handsome at all. Tan Tan was fuming with anger when he heard this. He flew into a rage. You old bastard. You old bastard. You dare to say that I'm not handsome? You're really audacious. You're inverting black and white. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Someone pull out his penis for me and put it on his face. Everyone felt dizzy, including the 3 Stars clansmen. Or, it should be said that they were the ones with the most unsightly complexions at the moment. Everyone had already understood and accepted the great king's unreasonableness a long time ago. But at this moment, in this environment and in this situation, it was seriously too embarrassing. When I say that you're handsome, you say that I'm speaking against my conscience. When I say that you're not handsome, you fly into a rage. What should I do to make you satisfied? A certain tender piece of flesh at Tan Tan's waist was fiercely pinched by a jade-like hand and turned around on its own. It did a full 310-degree turn without any hesitation at all. Great Demon King Tan, who was in the midst of giving orders, instantly had his face contorted so much that it almost became that of a normal person's. With a contorted face, Guigu took a step forward. Understood. Then a round and puffy figure charged down from mid-air at high speed, heading straight for Qin Jianlong. As that round and puffy figure moved, a dense mist formed at the same time. Everyone had the same feeling at the same time. This part of the world had suddenly turned into a funnel that was upside down. And Guigu was precisely the tip at the bottom of that funnel. A mysterious and abnormally strong suction force suddenly formed, and with a boom, an invisible funnel fell down like a lightning bolt, and suddenly stood erect on the ground. Another boom was heard, and the other people around Qin Jianlong were all sent flying by the powerful force. Suddenly, Qin Jianlong was the only one standing in the middle of the crowded crowd. Guigu's momentum didn't change as he pounced down at lightning speed. Qin Jianlong was actually able to maintain his composure despite the sudden change in circumstances. With a loud cry, he struck out with his palm with all his might to resist the incoming person. As long as he could diminish the incoming person's sharpness a little, his own reinforcements would arrive immediately. By then he would naturally be safe. Guigu let out a cold laugh. His right hand reached out quickly and accurately grabbed Qin Jianlong's wrist. Qin Jianlong thrust out his sword with his right hand, intending to mitigate the danger to his left hand. However, in the instant that the sword light had yet to form, Guigu suddenly opened his mouth wide and actually bit off a section of that well-tempered sword with a loud crunch. Then, he exerted force in his hand and swung Qin Jianlong up, fixing him powerlessly in mid-air with his head facing downwards and his feet facing upwards. At this point, Qin Jianlong no longer had any room for resistance. He was at the mercy of others. And then, Qin Jianlong's tragedy began. Guigu was obviously very obedient to a certain divine king's orders. Without caring about the situation, he really reached out with his left hand and tore Qin Jianlong's robes apart. He cackled strangely and said, "Divine King, you want me to pull out this fellow's dick in its entirety and then put it on his face, don't you?" As the robes tore apart, that hand had already moved to the vicinity of the human body's heart and was about to make the next move. At this moment, Xiao Qinyu had already come over on his sword. He shouted loudly, "Let go!" If this fatty really stripped Qin Jianlong naked in front of everyone, there was no need for him to really make a move to carry out the next step. Qin Jianlong would probably be too ashamed to see anyone ever again, much less pull out his dick in its entirety and put it on his face. Guigu let out a cold snort. His empty left hand swung out and clashed against Xiao Qinyu's sword with just one palm, causing sparks to fly everywhere. He actually didn't retreat at all and wasn't at a disadvantage at all. Xiao Qinyu somersaulted back, his countenance solemn. "You're actually peak level?" Chapter 1554. Even though Xiao Qinyu had gone through a fierce battle and even vomited a few mouthfuls of blood, causing his strength to be reduced slightly, to be able to fight Xiao Qinyu to a standstill with just one palm was still not something an ordinary person could do. Low-grade supreme martial artist? Ah! Guigu roared into the sky. This old man is Guigu of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. As he spoke, his stomach heaved up and down, matching his name perfectly. It was extremely comical, but no one on the other side dared to laugh. Peak-grade supreme martial artist. In the Chong Heavens continent, that represented supremacy. Who dared to laugh? Making fun of a peak-grade supreme martial artist? Did you still want to live? Did your whole family still want to live? Did the forces behind you still want to live? Of course there were still people who dared to laugh. Even if there weren't any on the Allied forces side, no one on the Li clan's side, and no one on Tribulation's side, there was still a fool who was chuckling. That person was naturally a certain Lord Saint King. Guigu, you're just too honest. Tan Tan sighed. What I want is something that can still be used after putting it on. Can you do that? Answer after you've thought it through. Guigu was stunned. He said, if I can't do it, who can? Everyone felt a wave of dizziness. Putting that thing on one's face. Could it still be used? Even if it could still be used, for what purpose? Saint King Tan said furiously, you insensible thing. If you can't do it, then hurry up and ask him to get lost. Can't you see that I'm enduring torture? Guigu raised an eyebrow. Since he couldn't do anything to a certain Saint King, he naturally had a grievance. It just so happened that there was a punching bag here. He kicked Qin Jianlong's butt heavily. Get lost. Qin Jianlong flew out at once as if he was riding on the clouds. He flew across several thousand feet of space in an exceptionally graceful posture, landing somewhere unknown. This fool. What time is it now and you're still fooling around? Chu Yang sent him a telepathic message. Hurry up and clean up this mess. Do you still want your 3 stars divine clan to see the light of day again? If you continue fooling around, be careful that I don't punish you. Tan Tan was having fun flaunting his prowess over there. When he heard the message, he subconsciously shrank his neck. He coughed and replied repeatedly, oh 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 oh. Another Sun Race elder asked curiously, Saint King, what did you say? Eh? Tan Tan blinked his eyes. Then he faced upwards and laughed out loud, proud. That arrogance. That ao. Wow. This king looks down on the world. This king is incomparably proud. This king is unparalleled in the world. This king is proud. What? Can't I? The super experts around him all had black lines on their faces. They said obsequiously, yes of course. It was too good. You're howling. Tan Tan stood in the void. He waved his big hand and shouted, this place looks pretty good. I've decided to kindly accept it. Our 3 stars divine clan will return to the Jianghu from now on. We will enter the Double Heavens continent. This snow-covered northwestern region will be the territory of our 3 stars divine clan from now on. In this territory, every living person is a member of my 3 stars divine clan. Furthermore, all the wealth in this land will belong to my 3 stars divine clan. Tan Tan's black hair fluttered and fluttered in the air. He then shouted loudly, this king has issued an order. Who dared to disagree? Little ones, quickly shout the slogan. The experts of the 3 stars divine clan responded subconsciously, the holy king's order shakes the heavens. He commands the world. No one dares to disobey. They shut their mouths after shouting. This thing is really too embarrassing. How did we end up with such a king? Xiao Qinyu's face was heavy. Looking at the unusually arrogant and domineering 3 stars divine clan in the sky, his heart was filled with endless worry. The 3 stars divine clan had actually come out of the secret land. And there were so many peak experts. And now they were even claiming to occupy the northwestern region and rule over a piece of land. This was big news. It might not be inferior to revealing the identity of the Calamity Sword Master. Old man, you're the leader over there. What do you think of our 3 stars divine clan's decision? Very wise. I mean, this holy king's decision is very wise. Tan Tan looked at Xiao Qinyu disdainfully. Do you have any objections? Xiao Qinyu took a deep breath. Although he had only met this 3 stars divine king for a short time, he was already clear that this guy was definitely an extremely unreasonable existence. As long as there was a disagreement, he would go to extremes. He might as well ignore him. He quickly weighed the situation of both sides. Finally, he sighed dejectedly in his heart. In the current situation, the Allied forces no longer had any advantage. If they rashly started a war, these people on the Allied forces side would very likely be buried here. If they retreated now, they wouldn't be able to get any wealth. It would be a loss of face. But if they also couldn't get any wealth after the war, they would lose their lives. But the other party's words clearly meant that he didn't want to start a war now. That was why he asked that question. That sentence gave both sides room to maneuver. Each side had a way out. The 3 stars divine clan had just come out. As the hero of a region, they definitely needed a base as a foothold. This place had just lost the high-level experts of the Li clan. They could take advantage of this situation. This was the first reason. The foothold needed a deterrent force. If they started a war now, the 3 Stars Divine Clan would definitely suffer losses. This wasn't good for their long-term plans. This was the second reason. Third, the cultivation of Calamity Sword Master and his brothers wasn't high. It wasn't impossible for them to suffer losses in such a big war. As for the fourth reason, once the war started, the number of deaths of these women and children would definitely be a terrifying number. Even if they weren't all wiped out, the number of survivors would definitely be extremely limited. After a comprehensive evaluation, the other party also had scruples. As long as they judged the situation and made a choice, the other party would definitely not choose to start a war rashly. This was because starting a war rashly would result in a lose-lose situation. If both sides took a step back, each side would have a way out. It was a win-win situation. Of course, if they insisted on not giving up their wealth and insisted on fighting to the death, the other party would definitely not be polite. It would be best if the women and children of the Li clan could be saved. If not, it would only be a pity. It wasn't necessary. It might even save a lot of trouble. Your Excellency's decision is very wise, really very wise. Xiao Qinyu weighed his thoughts in a flash and finally made a decision: retreat. Although Xiao Qinyu seemed to have made a wise decision, he was actually extremely aggrieved. The 8 great clans and the law enforcement officers had joined forces to go to the northwest. Along the way they had lost a terrifying 80% of their total military strength. Only then did they succeed and force the Li clan into a desperate situation. They were about to kill all of them and enjoy the fruits of their victory. But at this time an unforeseen event happened. All their efforts were not only in vain, but also in the process of making a wedding dress for someone else. Not only did all their efforts benefit the 3 Stars Divine Clan, they even had to sing praises for them and give them a way out. Motherfucker, wasn't this trying to conquer others? In the end they were conquered by a third party. What the fuck was this? This made them feel so aggrieved that they almost vomited blood. Especially Xiao Qinyu, who was the leader, felt the most aggrieved. Who did all their hard work for. In the end it was all for the wedding dress. After toiling and weathering a few storms, in the end, it was all for the wedding dress. We didn't get any benefits at all. Instead, we were hated by the remaining members of the Li clan for a lifetime. The 3 Stars Divine Clan got all the benefits in passing and was even treated with gratitude by the Li clan. How could it be like this? Is it good? Is it really good? Tan Tan laughed strangely. Since you also think it's good, why don't you leave? Are you going to say one thing and mean another again? Do you want me to entertain you? Set up a table? Have a drink? He tilted his head. Or, you killed so many people in my territory and want to compensate? I won't mind this. You're welcome. Xiao Qinyu sighed deeply. The thoughts of the person in front of him had really exceeded the scope of a human. He didn't want to talk anymore. He simply waved his hand. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. We'll meet again someday. Holy King, it may not be so easy for the 3 Stars Divine Clan to break out of the northeast and establish a foothold in the northwest. This is all I have to say. Holy King, please consider it carefully. Tan Tan laughed strangely. Can I understand that you're provoking me? It's okay. If your big clans are dissatisfied, you're welcome to come at any time. I'll entertain you at any time. But don't say that I didn't warn you. Before I came, the Li clan was the Li clan. After I came, the women and children left behind by the Li clan are my people. Whoever dares to act rashly and humiliate them, I'll chase them down for thousands of miles and kill them all. I won't care who's behind them or what power they have. Do you understand what I'm saying? Tan Tan stood up. He pointed one finger to the sky and the other to the ground. He stomped his feet and shouted, "Big clans are nothing in my eyes." Wah! Xiao Qinyu's whole body shook. He stared at him and didn't speak for a long time. The shame and anger in his heart had almost reached the limit. Everyone in the allied army behind him was so angry that their veins were bulging. They had never seen such a bully. At this moment, as long as Xiao Qinyu said to fight, it would be a great battle at all costs. The other party, this ugly monster Holy King, was really unbearable. Looking at the 7,000 brothers of the Li clan, they were even more unwilling. In that case, wouldn't there be no end of trouble? Looking at the 7,000 young men of the Li clan with excellent aptitude, if they really allowed them to grow up, wouldn't it be like a thorn in their back? No need to say more. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. We'll meet again in the martial world. Xiao Qinyu spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was purple and swollen. He gave the order to retreat. Qin Jianlong's mouth was full of blood. He finally ran back. Xiao Qinyu was already organizing everyone to retreat in batches. He didn't dare to say a word and just followed. Chapter 1555. Qin Jianlong and the remaining experts of the Chen family felt their hearts bleed, but they didn't dare to say anything. This ugly ghost could make a move at the slightest disagreement. If it was just a simple move, it would be fine if they lost their lives. However, he opened his mouth and kept talking about tricks. If someone really did something to him, it would be a fate worse than death. Tribulation Sword Master. Xiao Qinyu turned his head, looked deeply at Chu Yang and said, "This 3 stars divine clan is your helper? Your trump card?" Chu Yang said calmly, "Does Elder Xiao think that the 3 stars divine clan is my ally? Do I have such a powerful trump card?" Xiao Qinyu sneered. "I'm afraid you don't have that ability." Chu Yang sneered. "Then why are you still asking? Has your head been kicked by a donkey?" Xiao Qinyu snorted and left. He shouted from afar, "Tribulation Sword Master. Let's settle old scores in the future." Chu Yang sneered but didn't say anything else. The current Xiao Qinyu was filled with anger and was not to be trifled with. If he was really angered and a battle broke out, it wouldn't be easy to handle. In the blink of an eye, the people of the allied forces had already disappeared without a trace. Elder Xiao were leaving just like that? Qin Jianlong asked, obviously unwilling to give up. Not leaving? Stay and fight to the death? Bring everyone here? If you have the courage, you can stay and fight. Xiao Qinyu looked at him coldly. Qin Jianlong was speechless. Gu Yigu's astonishing strength previously had left him with lingering fear. Even now he was still in shock. After we go back, tell the world the news of the reappearance of the 3 stars divine clan. In addition, we have to focus on the news of Tribulation Sword Master and tribulation to the big families and law enforcers. Xiao Qinyu said calmly, "If we all die here, who will deliver the news?" Diwu Qingru, idiot, calling you an idiot is insulting an idiot. Diwu Qingru has already gathered his people and returned to the south. He's taking advantage of the chaos to establish the Diwu clan. The more chaotic the situation is, the more advantageous it is for him. Why would he spread this news for us? Xiao Qinyu sighed. He could vaguely feel that the 8 super clans had joined forces to wipe out the Li clan this time. On the surface it seemed like they had succeeded. After all, from the elder ancestor Li Chuanbo down, all the main experts of the Li clan had died an unnatural death. The vast majority of them had died by self-detonation, their spirits destroyed, never to be reincarnated. But in reality it seemed to be a huge loss. Tribulation had already begun to take shape. Wu Jueqing's position had changed from ambiguous to clear. The Moon Breeze experts were now in Chu Yang's clan, and now, the 3 stars divine clan had also come out of seclusion because of this matter. They had occupied a place on the continent. And the Diwu clan had also seized the opportunity to rise. Moreover, the situation would be even worse if those 2 old fellows, Ning Tianya and Bulu Qing, were to reappear. This continent had fallen into an abnormally chaotic situation. And this great chaos was actually caused by this encirclement and suppression. It's too chaotic. It's too chaotic. After thinking for a long time, Xiao Qinyu still couldn't think of any clues. Instead, he felt as if his brain had turned into paste and was no longer listening to his commands. He couldn't help but look up to the sky and let out a long sigh. He really wasn't the material to think about these things. If only Diwu Qingro was still here. "Old Xiao, the Tianding Grand Meeting is about to begin," Qin Jianlong said. "Tianding Grand Meeting?" Xiao Qinyu frowned. Then he said, "This time, may be an opportunity. Everyone gather." Tan Tan shouted from the sky. The women and children of the Li clan looked at this great demon king who had suddenly appeared with some fear. Was this demon king of the 3 stars divine clan going to rule the northwest? He was an existence that even Xiao Qinyu had to retreat from. According to the elder ancestor, Xiao Qinyu's strength was even above the elder ancestors. So, how strong was this great demon king? Could it be that they had just escaped from the tiger's den and entered the wolf's den? The women and children of the Li clan subconsciously rushed toward Chu Yang, Mo Tianji and the others. At least there were a few familiar faces here, or they could rely on them. Anyway, it was more important to stay away from that ugly guy. Chu Yang sighed and said, "Everyone, don't worry. He won't hurt you." Even with Chu Yang's persuasion, the people of the Li clan still instinctively felt a heartfelt fear toward Tan Tan and the others. "Everyone, you can rest assured. The 3 stars divine clan is also human." Tan Tan tilted his head and shouted loudly, "Today I solemnly promise you one thing, Li clan. Your surname will always be Li. You can still live here. We won't use our power to bully you and we won't persecute you. You can still do what you did in the past. Our existence is to provide you with protection. Of course, this protection isn't free. In return, you need to provide us with some labor in exchange for some necessary survival resources. I believe you can understand this. With the character of the Li clan, you won't want others' charity, right? As for the younger generation of the Li clan, if they have good aptitude, they can also come here to be selected and learn high-level martial arts. If they succeed in their martial arts in the future, it's not impossible for them to go out and find your enemies to take revenge. At that time they will take revenge on the Li clan and even shock the world. These are all things that can be realized. Tan Tan said, but it's still too early to say these things. At present we must first trust each other and live in harmony. Now we have a lot of time. You can first deal with the clan's affairs and discuss the follow-up. Ensuring the safety of the living and the rest of the dead is the most important thing right now. At this point, although this great demon king's words were somewhat incoherent, the people of the Li clan still felt relieved. It seemed that at least their lives were saved. Those children wouldn't be in danger for the time being. Just this point alone was already much better than before. Everyone in the Li clan called out to their friends. It was almost a mess. Those women rushed to their children like crazy. For a moment, the cries of those who had survived a disaster sounded one after another. Each of the women had tears streaming down their faces. They hugged their children tightly, crying tears of joy. The 120,000 Li clan disciples with low cultivation also knelt down at the same time. They kowtowed deeply toward the place where the battle had just happened. The heroic souls of the Li clan rest in peace here. Please rest in peace. One day we will personally take revenge for this blood feud. Li clan members continuously came over to thank Chu Yang and Mo Tianji. The enemy had already retreated. From Chu Yang's attitude toward the 3 Stars Divine Clan and Wu Jueqing, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this group of people were probably reinforcements invited by the Tribulation Sword Master. Although they came a little late, they still saved the entire Li clan, especially the juniors. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji dealt with them for a long time before they finally handed over the follow-up matters to Xie Danxiong and Ao Shiyun. Mo Tianji, Tan Tan and the others entered a courtyard of the Li clan. When it came to dealing with such matters, Ao Shiyun and Xie Danxiong were both experts. Of course, the two of them also selected some elders of the 3 Stars Divine Clan to help. There was also a portion of the 3 Stars Divine Clan who immediately set off. They returned to the clan's original home and prepared to handle the migration of the entire clan here. After all, moving from the northeast to the northwest was a joyous occasion for the 3 Stars Divine Clan. Although this place was also a land of ice and snow and the environment wasn't very good, it was still a place where people could live. As long as it was a place where people could live, it was 1,000 times better than their original residence. This courtyard was Li Xiongtu's original residence. When everyone entered, Meng Huanhuan came out to welcome them. Everyone was shocked. This bright-eyed and white-toothed girl had a shiny steel saber on her neck. She held the saber hilt in her hand and secretly peeked her head out. Obviously, if she discovered that the people who came weren't from the Li clan, she was prepared to kill herself immediately to avoid being humiliated. When she confirmed that it was Mo Tianji and the others, she finally relaxed. With a clang, the steel saber fell to the ground. Then she rushed over to Mo Tianji and asked with some apprehension and doubt, "Mo? Military advisor Mo, where's Xiongtu? He's there? He must be fine?" As she spoke, tears filled her eyes. She hoped to get a positive answer but was afraid that bad news would come. Mo Tianji smiled and said, "Don't worry, he's fine, he'll be back in a while." When Meng Huanhuan heard the words "he's fine," it was the most beautiful sound of nature. Her whole body trembled and she almost fell to the ground. She tried her best to support herself, but in the end she sat on the ground weakly and suddenly burst into tears. He's fine, woo-woo." She suddenly burst into tears of joy and burst into tears. As she cried, the corners of her mouth revealed a happy smile. Everyone understood her feelings. But they didn't know how to comfort her. They could only sigh in unison. Tan Tan muttered, "Sigh, women are so strange. If something happened to him she would of course cry. But she would cry even more when he's fine. It's fine if she's just crying. But she's crying and laughing at the same time. It's really hard to understand." Before he could finish speaking, Xie Danfeng kicked him fiercely. "Get out of here. I've never seen a fool like you. Why do you care whether she's crying or laughing? It's none of your business. Get out of here quickly." Then she stepped forward to comfort Meng Huanhuan. Tan Tan stood up as if nothing had happened. He patted his buttocks. Then he saw the disdainful eyes of Mo Tianji and the others. He proudly said, "Did you see that? This is the advantage of being handsome. She's afraid that I'm a womanizer, so she's watching me closely." Ugh! Mo Tianji tilted his head. His face was distorted and he almost vomited. Everyone sat down in the hall. Mo Tianji instructed GMO to go and carry the unconscious Li Xiongtu back. Then he specifically instructed, "It's good that you carry him back. Don't wake him up." Elder Li said that there's a time limit of 3 days. But it's not absolute. Don't be careless. If he wakes up by himself, punch him and knock him out. Otherwise, I'm afraid that something will happen. In short, it's best to be careful. He thought, Li Xiongtu has a bad temper. It would be terrible if he were to wake up and die for his friend. Chapter 1556. GMO agreed repeatedly. He patted his chest and made a series of promises, then left confidently. Given GMO's current cultivation, not to mention that Li Xiongtu was currently in a coma, even if Jian was in his normal state, he would definitely not be GMO's match. Everyone took their seats one by one. They were Chu Yang, Mo Tianji, Tan Tan, Luo Kadi, Gu Duxing, Rui Badong, Mo Qingwu, Chu Le, Mo Lei, Dong Wushang, Wu Jueqing, Gu Yigu, Dukyu, and 2 other elders from the 3 Stars Divine Clan. Other than Ao Shiyun and Xie Danqiong who were outside making arrangements, and GMO who went to fight the enemy, all the key figures were gathered here. Why did you take so long? Why didn't you come a little later? Wouldn't it have been easier for you to come after we started fighting with the allied forces of the clans? Chu Yang frowned and questioned Tan Tan. The moment he opened his mouth, his tone was one of condemnation. It even seemed a little condescending and vicious. The elder from the 3 Stars Divine Clan was very displeased with Chu Yang's attitude. He was furious and shouted, "How can you speak like that? Who are you talking to? Do you know who you are talking to? Be more respectful. Don't be fooled by how unruly their divine king was. That was ultimately a family matter and a family matter. It was unacceptable for an outsider to offend them." Tan Tan was furious. He turned and shouted, "How can you speak like that? Who are you talking to? Do you know who you are talking to?" As he spoke, he was about to give him a slap. "Why do we need an outsider like you to interfere in our matters? How can you be so blind? How we speak is our business. Even if we curse, what can you do about it? You keep interrupting for no reason. No matter what your intentions are, it's unacceptable." Endless saliva sprayed all over this elder's face. That elder was tongue-tied at once. He was completely at a loss, completely unaware of where he had offended the Divine King again. Wasn't he speaking up for the Divine King? Guigu sat right next to him. His expression didn't change. The corners of his mouth twitched as he sent a telepathic message to him. "Idiot, this is the senior brother that our Divine King often talks about, Divine King Chu. You idiot, why aren't you shutting your mouth? Just listen. If you dare to make any more noise, or the Divine King will slap your face into a pulp." Holy King Chu. The elder of the Yu clan suddenly realized and shut his mouth tightly. It was not that they did not know that this was the legendary Holy King Chu. If he knew, would he dare to interrupt? "Ahem, senior brother, please be magnanimous and listen to my explanation. Actually, we didn't come late. We came quite early." Tan Tan rubbed his nose and said, he had come, but he had deliberately waited for a while. "Senior martial brother, you had stepped forward and clashed with that old man Xiao. We might have to wait a little longer." Chu Yang frowned and sighed deeply. He naturally understood the meaning behind Tan Tan's words. After all, how could he not feel the affection his brother had for him? The 3 Stars Divine Clan had every reason to watch as the Li clan was annihilated from top to bottom if he hadn't stepped forward to stop them. After that, they would come and pick the peaches. At that time, they would directly take over the entire territory of the Li clan. That would be the most ideal outcome for the 3 Stars Divine Clan. To be honest, Chu Yang also agreed. Except for a very limited number of people in the Li clan, the others were really not worth saving. However, it was those limited number of people that made Chu Yang feel a deep sense of pity. Especially the ancestor of the Li clan, Li Chuanbua, who made Chu Yang feel a kind of respect from the bottom of his heart. The ancestor of a big clan. He really didn't know if there would be a second person who could give him such a feeling. It was really too much of a pity for such a person to die just like that. Secondly, there was the situation of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. The current 3 Stars Divine Clan urgently needed a place to establish themselves. If the Li clan still had its power, even if it was only a small part of it, it would still be impossible for the 3 Stars Divine Clan to establish themselves on this land. In that case, there would definitely be a battle between the two sides. The one who would lose would definitely be the Li clan, but there would be no possibility of a peaceful ending. When that time really came, the fate of the women and children of the Li clan was destined to be annihilated. I understand what you mean. It's just a pity for the hero Li Chuanbua. It's really too much of a pity? Chu Yang sighed, somewhat disappointed. How could I not understand that? Tan Tan became solemn, which was rare of him. Therefore, I won't make things difficult for his grandchildren. Also, we will maintain a cooperative attitude toward them. We won't treat them as servants or slaves. To be honest, there are also benefits to keeping them around. After all, there are some necessary survival skills on this continent that we also need to learn from them. If there are any of their grandchildren who are successful, we will also do our best to nurture them. Previously, I promised that the Li clan would retain its independent status. This will never change. Tan Tan said, "Take this as my way of expressing my apology to the hero Li Chuanbua." He sneered. "Although the rest of the people in the Li clan aren't worthy of me doing this at all." Mo Chenji said, "This outcome is already very good. It will definitely exceed the expectations of most people." These words of his were directed at Chu Yang. Chu Yang nodded. Tan Tan could indeed be said to be extremely benevolent by doing this. After all, Tan Tan didn't have any friendship with Li Chuanbua. There was really no need for him to show him any affection. At the end of the day, to be able to do all this, it was all because of Chu Yang's appearance. No matter what Tan Tan did, no matter what method he used, the final result would still be that he would be able to smoothly take over the Northwest. To be able to do this to the Li clan, this was already an additional benefit. As for saying that this move would exceed the expectations of most people, it wasn't only referring to the Li clan. It also included the other clans and the law enforcement officers. In their minds, with the 3-star Divine Clan taking over the Northwest, even if the Li clan still existed, they would have to completely depend on the 3-star Divine Clan for survival. It was also reasonable for them to be reduced to servants or even slaves. To all of you, this battle of the Northwest has already become a thing of the past. However, the key is, what are all of you preparing to do next? After Wu Jueqing finished speaking, he didn't wait for Chu Yang and Mo Tianji to reply. Instead, he took Chu Lur with him and left. Whether the master and disciple went to admire the snowy scenery or to impart their experiences, they ultimately left this place for the time being. What Wu Jueqing wanted to do was to use his identity as a senior to bring the topic back to the right track. After all, at the end of the day, everyone more or less felt a little guilty about the battle of the Li clan. If the Li clan continued to be shameless and despicable, then so be it if everyone used them. If they died, then so be it. But the problem was that the dead Li Chuanbua was so respected. This created a problem of conscience condemnation. This was the tragedy of heroes. They couldn't ignore their conscience. Only when they had a clear conscience could they stand proudly in the world. Whether it was Chu Yang or Mo Tianji, they would more or less have an additional worry about the Li clan. This was irreparable. It could be said to be a dead knot. If this problem continued to be entangled and debated, everyone would be unhappy. Therefore, Wu Jueqing stepped forward and forcefully turned the situation around. As for whether these little fellows would appreciate it or not, it wasn't something that Wu Jueqing had to consider. He didn't care either. It had to be said that having an elder in the family was like having a treasure. It was too useful. Wu Jueqing's words cut off everyone's debate about the Li clan's arrangements. Everyone understood tacitly and simply stopped mentioning this matter. As for the Li clan's arrangements, it became Tan Tan's matter alone or the 3 stars Divine Clan's matter. In any case, it had nothing to do with tribulation anymore. What's going to happen next? Chu Yang thought about it carefully and said, Tan Tan, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave for the time being? This is the first time the 3 stars Divine Clan has walked out of a dangerous place in the past 10,000 years. The Yin clan is huge. It won't do if you don't watch over it personally. Tan Tan scratched his head and said, wouldn't I be bored to death then? Why don't I hand over full authority here to Guigu and then we brothers go out and explore the martial world? How about that? Guigu's face contorted at once. Without you around, who can pacify those old fellows in the clan? Although those old fellows' cultivation isn't as good as mine, each and every one of them takes advantage of their seniority. Apart from Saint Kings, they won't submit to anyone. Dealing with those old fellows isn't a problem that can be solved just by having a bigger fist. Chu Yang, who could keenly tell that Guigu was put in a spot, gave him a carefree smile and said, We brothers have plenty of time in the future. If anything goes wrong with the migration of millions of people in your clan, it'll be an earth-shattering matter. That's something that concerns the inheritance of future generations. It won't do if you don't watch over it. Tan Tan bared his teeth in displeasure. Then he helplessly said, "Well, wait for me to settle down here. Then I will go and look for you. We brothers rarely meet each other. So, we have to break up right after we meet each other. Don't ever forget. From a certain perspective, the Li clan here is the foundation for the 3 Stars Divine clan to establish a foothold in the world. You mustn't be careless. It's only convenient for yourself if it's convenient for others," instructed Chu Yang. "I've got it." Tan Tan was rather impatient. "Why are you even more sissy than a sissy now? Don't you find it annoying to be so wishy-washy?" Gui Gu and the other 2 elders, however, exchanged a look, seemingly deep in thought. Initially they hadn't thought much of the Li clan either. However, Chu Yang's words about establishing a foothold in the world had reminded them of something. The 3 Stars Divine clan hadn't appeared in the last 100,000 years. They were already very unfamiliar with this land a long time ago. Since they had the intention to establish a foothold here, survive, reproduce and pass down their legacy, then they would have to interact with the locals and build good relations with them. Trade, human relations, customs and so on. All of these required assistance and guidance from others. Yet the members of the Divine clan were completely clueless about all these. It looked like they really had no choice but to rely heavily on the Li clan. No matter what, they were still the local tyrants who had lived here for over 10,000 years. Chapter 1557. Then it's time for us to take the next step. Chu Yang patted his thigh lightly and said, "We've already exposed our identities in the Battle of the Northwest. It can be imagined that the big clans will definitely see us as thorns and want to get rid of us. From now on, I'm afraid that every step we take will be filled with thorns. It'll be even harder to accomplish anything. So everyone must be careful. Also, everyone must continue to improve their own strength to deal with unexpected situations." Mo Tianji and the others nodded heavily in agreement. "Since we've already exposed our identities, we might as well not keep a low profile anymore. Let loose completely and turn the world upside down." Mo Tianji's words made everyone feel as if their blood was surging. However, Mo Tianji had actually been pondering over these words as he slowly said them word by word. "Yes, that's exactly what I mean." Chu Yang nodded approvingly. "Our next step is to charge out from the northwest. Charge back to the southeast, then charge out from the southeast and charge into the Heavenly Pinnacle Grand Assembly. Turn the world upside down. The legend of tribulations has been around for a long time. In our generation, we naturally have to write a new chapter of this legend." Good. Dong Wushang and Gu Duxing were the first to respond. Then Rui Butong and Luo Kadi, the 2 fellows who only wanted to see the world in chaos, raised their hands and feet in agreement. Hey, cough cough cough. Wait. A discordant voice suddenly sounded from the side. Who was so annoying to pour cold water on everyone at this time? Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. It was the handsome Dukyu who deserved a beating. Dukyu. Dukyu, what unique opinions do you have? Chu Yang clearly knew why Dukyu was looking for him, but he pretended not to know. This was the way things were. How could rushing forward be more comfortable and cheaper than hanging high to buy things? Cough, I'm not trying to pour cold water on everyone. I just think that increasing our strength is the most urgent problem right now. After all, only with profound strength will we have more capital. Dukyu coughed. He said very calmly, "And now, I just happen to know a place that can greatly increase everyone's strength. Yes, I can guarantee that as long as we get there, our cultivation will double overnight. Or even more." Dukyu could be considered to have put in a lot of effort. For the sake of the race, he did not hesitate to speak carelessly, bragging as much as he could. However, what he said, combined with the actual situation of the Calamity Sword, was completely reasonable. There was a high possibility that it would appear. But the problem was that Dukyu didn't even know where the 8th fragment of the Calamity Sword was. So, he was just spouting nonsense. When he heard that his strength could double or even more in a single night, he was shocked. The eyes of Rui Budong and the others lit up, eager to give it a try. Where? How could there be such a miraculous effect? Ah, I'm looking forward to it. Motherfucker, it seems that I can't go. Tan Tan said. That's right, that's right. Tell me, what kind of place are you talking about? Luo Kadi asked. Is this true? Why do I feel like you're just bragging? Rui Budong said. This guy has always been unreliable. I'd be lost if I listened to him. I don't believe him at all. Dong Wuxiang said. He. The one who was sneering was Gu Duxing. Not only did he not believe it, he directly ignored it. Do you really know such a place? The one who was doubtful was Mo Tianji. Of course, Mo Tianji was doubting the location of the 8th fragment of the Calamity Sword. Only that place could double the cultivation of his brothers. Other than that, there might not be any other similar shortcuts. Mo Tianji didn't believe that Duke Yu knew where the 8th fragment of the Calamity Sword was. That was a place that even the great sword master Chu couldn't find. I think it's fine as long as we have enough strength. What's important now is experience and temperament. If we don't have enough strength, we won't be able to handle it. Chu Yang snorted. Little guy, do you think I'll be led by the nose by you? You can't differentiate between master and servant. What a joke, a huge joke. Even if I want to go, I have to pretend that I don't want to go. Only if you beg me will I reluctantly agree. This is what it means to be a bitch but still have a chastity. Pretending to be a virtuous woman but still acting so prim and proper. You've been looking forward to it for a long time, but you're still so stubborn. Yes, Big Brother Chu is right. Everyone's strength has just increased, especially Rui Budong. Most of our strength comes from external forces. It's only right that we have to train and stabilize it. Mo Tianji could read Chu Yang's mind. He immediately agreed with Chu Yang's words perfectly. This is what it means to be in cahoots. Gu Duxing rolled his eyes and seemed to have understood something. He said, I think Big Brother and Tianji's words make a lot of sense. I was wondering why I've been acting a little strange recently. No matter how much Rui Budong and Luo Kadi wanted to improve, they could only nod. Both of them found it strange. Why did their brothers, who had always been so passionate about strength, suddenly become so indifferent? What was there to be afraid of if they lacked temperament? They couldn't find a place to improve their cultivation quickly. Duke Yu's face became a little ugly. He said with a twisted face, What do you mean? There's such a good place. I'm kind enough to take you there, but you don't want to go? Is there something wrong with your brains? Or is there something wrong with all of you? Tan Tan rolled his eyes and suddenly said, Old Duke Yu, it's okay. Don't be so discouraged. It's okay if they don't want to go. Don't you still have me? Where do you want to go? I'll go with you. I'll keep you company, okay? At most, I'll put aside everything here and take care of a friend's mood. These words made it seem as if going to the Holy Land for cultivation was something that no one was willing to pay attention to no matter how much Duke Yu begged. Duke Yu flew into a rage. You go? What's the use of you going? You're useless. Tisk tisk. Chu Yang chuckled. Brother Yu, you're wrong? Why do you have to be useful to go? Duke Yu didn't intend to hide anything. He said angrily, You still have the nerve to say that. Why didn't you tell me earlier that you have the Holy Spirit Spring? You only gave me a little bit. That's the holy object of our elf race. I originally thought that there was no hope of reviving my race. So I married Alu. After that, I completely gave up. I didn't even want to come to the upper 3 heavens anymore. But you took out the holy object of the elf race and lured me here. What? Are you thinking of not admitting it now? Chu Yang obviously knew that Duke Yu's goal was the Holy Spirit Spring in his hands. But wasn't his goal also the Tree of Life in Duke Yu's hands? But how could Chu Yang directly say that there was a request for this trump card? If he let Duke Yu know about his trump card, he really didn't know what this guy would do with his tyrannical nature. Even if he forced Chu Yang to work or waited for a good price or even blackmailed him. These were all Duke Yu's specialties in the upper 3 heavens. But now it seemed that everything was reversed. The situation was like this. Everything was easy to talk about. He was the fish on the chopping block. What else was there to talk about? This situation was simply too ideal. Brother Duke Yu, you're wrong. Chu Yang raised a finger. He said calmly, First, the elf race has disappeared for 100,000 years. It seems to be even older than the 3 Stars Divine Clan. So, let's not talk about this issue for the time being. Duke Yu opened his mouth and was about to speak. But he was stopped by Chu Yang. Second, I don't have the Holy Spirit Spring of the elf race. The source of life of the elf race is the Spring of Life, the eternal ancient tree, and the heavenly crystal moonlight. Chu Yang said lightly, I do have spring water in my hands. But it's only the Holy Spirit Spring. It's not the Spring of Life. This can be said to be the difference between heaven and earth. It's far from being comparable. Duke Yu said angrily, What do you mean by far from being comparable? The Holy Spirit Spring is the next step. It's the Spring of Life. Chu Yang said comfortably, I haven't made any progress yet, have I? A slight difference can lead to a huge difference. Don't you understand? Dukyu was tongue-tied. Besides, what did you say? Another step? Chu Yang said in surprise, the Holy Spirit spring is the next step. It's the spring of life? There's such a thing? Why don't I know about it? Also, how can it be further improved? This question is very troublesome. Chu Yang's surprised expression was really too fake. It was so fake that it couldn't even deceive a baby. Yet he still pretended to ask seriously. Mo Qingwu and Mo Lei, who were around, finally couldn't help but burst out laughing. Rui Budong and Luo Kadi winked at each other, their faces full of satisfaction. Gu Duxing coughed and looked up at the sky. He tried his best to maintain a serious and sharp look. Mo Qinji was gentle and elegant. Only Tan Tan felt that his senior brother's surprised expression this time was very handsome. So he took out a mirror from his bosom and imitated it. Tan Tan fiercely opened his eyes and opened his mouth to make a surprised expression. Then he used this as a contrast. He sighed and put the mirror aside. Sigh, I can't learn it no matter how hard I try. Talent, this thing like talent can't be learned. Dukyu was infuriated. He gritted his teeth in hatred. Then he sighed and said in a speechless manner, Chuyang, I beg you. You have to be more professional in your acting. At least, you have to let me know that you don't know? You can't be an idol forever. You should at least have some acting skills. Chuyang squinted and said, Actually, I've never cared about this matter. Although the spring of life and the Holy Spirit spring are one level apart, I'm not a fairy. The spring of life has no use for me. It's enough that the Holy Spirit spring can replenish my life force. Brother Dukyu, please don't blame me. I really didn't care about it. So, acting skills are really meaningless. I solemnly declare that I will always be an idol. Chapter 1558. Pigs are also quite cute. Chuyang smiled and said, other than being cute, they can also be eaten and have many uses. Dukyu was so angry that he wanted to die. He gritted his teeth and said, What conditions do you have? Say it. I'll do my best. You're saying it as if I have some ulterior motives? Chuyang said, I know what you want, but I can't give it to you. I have great use for this thing. If I give it all to you, what should I do? I can't possibly destroy my own plan for you, right? Dukyu said, I don't want it all. You're just giving it to me temporarily. I'll give it back to you when I'm done with it. Chuyang shook his head firmly. Give it to you temporarily? Give it back after you're done with it? How long is this temporary? 1 day, 2 days, 1 year, 2 years, 10,000 years, 20,000 years, or 100,000 years? If I give it to you, it's equivalent to giving my meat bun to a dog? No. Chuyang shook his head like a rattle drum. It won't take that long. Why don't you accompany me? That should be fine, right? Dukyu only felt his temples throbbing. He rubbed his temples with his fingers and said hatefully, It's fine. If I accompany you, wouldn't that mean that I'm helping you? You're really good at scheming. Not only are you calculating my things, but you're also calculating my people? With such scheming, I really don't dare to deal with you. Chuyang said worriedly, besides, who knows how much you'll use? If you use it all up, I won't even have a place to cry. There's no medicine for regret in this world, not to mention that I'm so busy now. The Tianding Grand Assembly is about to start. The situation in the martial world also needs us to create some public opinion to guide it. Chuyang made excuses. It was obvious that he wasn't willing to help. No matter what you say, I won't agree. What are you going to do about it? Dukyu was furious. He couldn't bear it anymore and stood up suddenly. You're fucking pretending. If you keep pretending, I promise you that when we open the City of Elves and restore the Holy Land of Elves, you can take whatever you want. There must be a lot of good things in the remains of our City of Elves. They're all left behind from ancient times. You should be satisfied, right? How about it? Give me a straightforward answer. If you don't agree, I'll turn around and go back to the three heavens. Deal? Chuyang didn't wait for him to finish speaking. Instead, he agreed in a loud and clear voice. His lazy body straightened up, and he stretched out his hand with a swoosh sound. Let's slap our palms as an oath. No one can go back on their words. Dukyu looked at the white palm that was placed on the tip of his nose and blinked his eyes. For a moment he was actually unable to react. What was going on? Wasn't Chuyang very unwilling to go to the border just now? How could he agree so readily? Was there a conspiracy? Dukyu faintly felt that he had fallen into a big trap. But he couldn't think of what kind of trap he had fallen into, and what he would lose. He had been eagerly waiting for Chu Yang to agree at first. But he had now become paranoid and didn't dare to make a decision. What do you want? Tell me frankly. Duke Yu asked suspiciously. You don't want to go? You're such an indecisive person. Chu Yang felt as if his bones had been taken out of his body. He sat back down lazily. Forget it. Smack. Duke Yu made a prompt decision and smacked Chu Yang's palm that hadn't been retracted yet. Duke Yu shouted, let's make an oath that we will never go back on our words. It's settled then. This guy was actually going to go back on his words? How could this be? Duke Yu made a prompt decision and immediately slapped the table. Chu Yang threatened, that's what you said. But if you don't keep your word, I won't be able to do anything to you. Your cultivation is so high. May the heavens punish me. Duke Yu hurriedly interrupted with a face full of smiles. That's good, that's good. When are we leaving? I know that you're very anxious. Chu Yang's face was full of smiles. He had an attitude of thinking for your sake. The other brothers also echoed with smiles on their faces. Everyone felt as if a big stone had been lifted from their hearts. They let out a long sigh of relief. Duke Yu felt that something wasn't right. He asked in bewilderment, what do you think? There's no time to lose. The sooner the better. Chu Yang said straightforwardly, we can leave now too. Oh, sweetheart. Duke Yu finally confirmed that he had indeed fallen into a trap. He rolled his eyes repeatedly. The most tragic thing was that until now, he still didn't know what he had fallen into. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword was in the City of Fairies. Even if he didn't beg Chu Yang to bring him there, Chu Yang would also beg him to bring him there. Because, other than Duke Yu, this pure-blooded elf, there was no second person in the entire heavens who could find and open the remains of the City of Fairies. Now, not only could Chu Yang get the 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword as he wished, he could also obtain many unexpected surprises along the way. He could wantonly plunder the remains of the City of Fairies. How could he not be overjoyed and overjoyed? Mo Tianji rolled his eyes. He finally confirmed that this bastard Chu Yang, in terms of treachery and cunning, he was not below him at all. This was originally a place that the brothers couldn't go even if they wanted to, but he actually managed to get such a good offer that was like a pie falling from the sky before they reluctantly agreed. What a weirdo, I'm convinced. Li Xiongtu, who was still in a deep coma, was carried over by GMO and placed on the bed. Just to look at this guy, GMO didn't even participate in the meeting to discuss the next step. One had to admit that Li Chuanbo was indeed a 10,000-year-old monster. If he said that he would be in a coma for 3 days, then he would be in a coma for 3 days. From the looks of it, if there was no external force to wake him up, it would definitely take 3 days for Li Xiongtu to wake up on his own. It was good that he was in a coma. To be honest, everyone frowned at this guy. Most importantly, they didn't know how to tell him the bad news of the Li clan. Everyone knew that this guy had a fiery temper and was as straightforward as a donkey. To put it nicely, he was a straight farmer. To put it bluntly, he was even more stubborn than a donkey. If he really knew the bad news that all the Li clan members who participated in the battle were sacrificed, everyone died and only he who didn't participate in the battle survived, he would probably go. It was precisely because of this that Chu Yang and Mo Tianji placed GMO beside him to watch over him. Meng Huanhuan also rushed over at once. She stayed by Li Xiongtu's side, her face full of worry. It wasn't because Li Xiongtu was in a coma. She was similarly clear about Li Xiongtu's character and personality, and even more so about the possible consequences. What do we do now? We can't keep watching over him, right? Why don't we wake him up now? GMO rubbed his hands, somewhat eager to give it a try. He was rather tired of the mission of guarding a man. Mo Tianji frowned. Wait a while more. Let me think about it. What else do you need to think about? What are you worried about? If Li Xiongtu can't even take this blow, how can he be worthy of being my enemy for life? Dong Wushang snorted coldly. Although he said so, Dong Wushang still respected Mo Tianji's decision and didn't rashly wake Li Xiongtu up. Mo Tianji's mind stirred. That's right. If he sinks into depravity just like this, he will indeed be an unworthy piece of trash. External forces have always only been supplementary. Being at ease with one's own heart is the foundation. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Dong Wushang. Speaking of which, the person who understands a person the most is ultimately you, the greatest enemy of his life. I boast that I'm good at scheming, but I often overlook a person's heart. I'm ashamed. Meng Huanhuan suddenly raised her head and focused all her attention and gaze on Dong Wushang. She exclaimed, You are Dong Wushang? She suddenly recalled that Li Xiongtu had mentioned this person more than once before. The person whom Li Xiongtu considered to be his greatest rival in this lifetime, the person whom he had been chasing after all this time, was called Dong Wuxiang. Now that she had finally seen him in person, Meng Huanhuan saw that Dong Wuxiang had a tall and sturdy build. Even if he wasn't using his martial arts, he still looked like a hero who dominated thousands of soldiers and dominated the world. She couldn't help but be moved in her heart. Only such a heroic figure was worthy of being Li Xiongtu's opponent. That's right, I am Dong Wuxiang. I believe Li Xiongtu must have mentioned me to you? Dong Wuxiang laughed loudly and said, if Li Xiongtu really can't take it anymore and breaks down, then I'll kill him with a stroke of my saber and give him a quick death, ending all troubles once and for all. After he finished speaking, amidst Meng Huanhuan's exclamation of surprise, he slapped Li Xiongtu's head cleanly. From his palm, a surge of pure origin energy poured down from the top of Li Xiongtu's head. Li Chuanbua's palm energy had long reached the level of being able to control it at will. The force used to knock Li Xiongtu unconscious was just right and definitely wouldn't really hurt Li Xiongtu. Thus, it was also relatively simple to save him. He only needed to use pure origin energy to stimulate Li Xiongtu's Baihui acupoint. The next moment, Li Xiongtu shouted, "Kill!" All of a sudden he flipped over and jumped up. Everyone tensed up and locked their divine senses onto Li Xiongtu. Dong Wuxiang was especially nervous. Don't be fooled by his carefree attitude earlier. When it really came down to it, he was still nervous. If Li Xiongtu really became dispirited or committed suicide out of guilt, the one who would feel the most uncomfortable would be Dong Wuxiang. Li Xiongtu stood there like a javelin. Seeing that everyone had gathered around him, there was still some confusion in his expression. Then his gaze slowly slid across everyone's faces. His expression slowly calmed down and became cold and stern. Then he fell silent. Chu Yang said softly, "Li Xiongtu, I believe that you've already guessed some things. Therefore I won't say any more. Do you understand what I mean?" Li Xiongtu nodded heavily. His voice was more or less hoarse as he said, I understand. Then he lowered his head and asked in a hoarse voice, "They're all dead, right?" Chu Yang nodded and said affirmatively, "Yes, they're all dead." To the current Li Xiongtu, this sentence was a little deliberately added cruel. But Chu Yang still said it. Dong Wuxiang was right. To men things had to be faced. There was no use in running away. Li Xiongtu took in a long breath. Raising his head, he asked in a deep voice, "Where's Elder Master Li Chuanbua? He's dead too?" Chu Yang said, "He's gone too." His body and Tao dissipated and he turned into flames. Chapter 1559. Li Xiongtu's body suddenly shook and he fell into a dead silence. After a long time he slowly raised his head as if his head weighed thousands of kilograms. His eyes shone with an extremely sharp light as he stared at Chu Yang's face. He asked word by word, "Who killed him?" "Who?" "Xiao Qinyu. The first clan master of the Xiao clan." "Xiao Qinyu." Li Xiongtu nodded slowly, as if he had already engraved these 3 words into his heart. He laughed tragically and said, "I will take revenge. I will take revenge for the elder ancestor." Suddenly he looked up to the sky and roared. Using all his cultivation he said word by word, "I will take revenge. Xiao Qinyu." The roar spread far and wide, echoing back and forth in the silent sky of the northwest. All the Li clan members who heard it stopped what they were doing. They stood solemnly in the snow and quietly shed tears. Then Li Xiongtu maintained his upright posture and looked at Chu Yang. He said slowly, "What about the women and children of the Li clan? Are they dead too?" "They survived by luck." Chu Yang said, "But the northwest no longer belongs to the Li clan." Li Xiongtu nodded and said, "I understand. Thank you." Then he said, "Huanhuan, let's go." Meng Huanhuan stood up gracefully. Li Xiongtu took the lead and actually turned to walk out just like that. He had only taken 2 steps when his body suddenly shook. Then he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood with a "wha" sound. The blood shot out like an arrow and actually made a small hole in the ground. "Li Xiongtu!" Dong Wuxiang shouted. Li Xiongtu and Meng Huanhuan stood at the door but didn't turn back. Dong Wuxiang exuded a violent and domineering aura. The turbulent air roared and rushed toward Li Xiongtu. Dong Wuxiang said in a low voice, "You are too slow." Li Xiongtu slowly turned back and met Dong Wuxiang's gaze with an equally sharp and domineering gaze. Dong Wuxiang's eyes were full of provocation and violence. "Thank you for the reminder," Li Xiongtu said in a low voice. I will catch up to you. I won't make you wait for long. After that, he turned and walked away, but his steps were already as firm as iron. Chuyang sighed and said, Li Xiong Tuesday. I don't know when we'll meet again after we part here, but before we part, I want to give your wife a gift. If we meet again in the future, you have to repay me. He raised his hand. A purple jade bottle slowly flew out. Li Xiongtu didn't turn around. He grabbed her hand and replied straightforwardly, If I can ascend the heavenly palace in the future, I will definitely repay this favor. Without another word, the majestic figure supported Meng Huanhuan and strode out. Obviously he knew what Chu Yang had given him. The most precious gift that the Tribulation Sword Master could give was the heavy pill, which was something that only the Tribulation Sword Master could give. The purpose of giving it to Meng Huanhuan was to raise her aptitude so that she could accompany Li Xiongtu on his path of martial arts and charge straight into the heavenly imperial court. Otherwise, if Meng Huanhuan couldn't charge forward, Li Xiongtu was entangled in love and sin, so he was bound to stay where he was. Indirectly, he had lost the qualifications to reach the peak. Therefore this was a huge favor. Li Xiongtu also understood Dong Wuxiang's intentions, but he wouldn't back down. Li Chuan's death must be avenged. Dong Wuxiang's challenge. They had to agree. Chu Yang's favor must be repaid. From start to finish, Li Xiongtu didn't even look at Mo Tianji. Watching Li Xiongtu leave, Mo Tianji touched his nose and smiled bitterly. He hates me. I'm afraid he hates me to the core. How can he not hate you? Chu Yang rolled his eyes. It's fine as long as you know it. Mo Tianji shook his head and laughed. The things that I do are things that people hate. But you, the master of the Calamity Sword, are different. As the Tribulation Sword Master, you're quite good at winning people over. You're already the good guy, how can I not be the bad guy? There's always someone who's the bad guy, isn't there? Mo Qingwu held Chu Yang's shoulder and smiled. Yes. Chu Yang will only be the good guy in the future. Anyway, second brother will be the bad guy. The two of you are a perfect match. You're not allowed to decline and fulfill second brother's wish. Mo Tianji was so angry that his nose almost went crooked. He glared at her and said, You little girl, you're really not afraid of things getting out of hand. Aren't you afraid that I'll be beaten to death one day because I've offended too many people? Mo Qingwu waved her little fist. Second brother, don't worry. I'll protect you. Chu Yang will also protect you. He'll protect you on my account. Mo Tianji was completely speechless. This little girl was really infuriating. Everyone pack up. We'll leave tomorrow morning to help minister you. Chu Yang stood up and made a decision right away. Mo Tianji was even more speechless. How are these two so compatible? They're both top-notch experts who speak the opposite way. That night, Dukyu was taking a nap in his bedroom. His hands were behind his head as he thought about things. Chu Yang had appeared silently, and had given him a big fright. I say, if you don't give me the seed of the tree of life now, when are you going to give it to me? Do you have any sincerity? Minister Chu had a hateful look on his face. Why should I? Do I have to give it to you just because you said so? Am I supposed to give it to you? Dukyu was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He jumped up and felt extremely pained. It's exactly what you should give it to me? Don't you know that the spring of life needs to be brewed? Chu Yang crossed his legs and said calmly, If you want to recreate the city of fairies, you need to use the spring of life to irrigate it. If you don't give it to me now, let it fuse in advance and let the spring of life take shape. Are you going to wait until we're there to do it? I don't care. I'm just afraid that you can't wait. Are you going to give it to me or not? If you don't give it to me, I'll leave. What kind of world is this? I was kind enough to help you plan it, but why should I? In this world, it's hard to be a good person. Dukyu stared for a while and didn't dare to refute. Finally, he reached into his pocket with a pained expression. His hand stopped in his pocket. He raised his head and asked suspiciously, Are you sure? Is that really the case? Chu Yang turned around and left. Bah, what kind of person do you think I am? Are you spouting nonsense? Pretend I didn't say anything. There will be a time when you regret it. Wait, I was wrong. I'll give it to you. The muscles on Dukyu's face contorted. I'll give it to you. Following his words, a multicolored seed suddenly appeared. An abnormally surging life force suddenly filled the entire room, and it was still rapidly spreading outwards. An indescribable green aura, a natural aura, suddenly appeared. Chu Yang took a breath in enjoyment. It's really good stuff. Dukyu stared. What's wrong with you? Hurry up and take it. This is something that I've been using my divine soul to nurture. If you can't provide me with enough spring of life, I'll be finished." He hurriedly took it and stuffed it into the tribulation space. Great Sword Master Chu said solemnly, "Don't worry. You still don't believe me? Our moral quality is just—" Duke Yu rolled his eyes. "Believing you is a little difficult." Chu Yang's face darkened. He turned around and left. Only Duke Yu was left in the room, letting out long and short sighs. He's really a vampire. Why didn't I see it back then? The heavens are truly blind. How could they let him get his hands on the Holy Spirit spring? There's no justice in this world. Duke Yu sighed. Chu Yang didn't return to his own room. Instead, he went straight to Imo Qingwu's room. Once the spring of life was formed, it would release a boundless amount of life energy. This was a great benefit. Moreover, this benefit required two people's skin to touch in order to achieve the greatest effect. Chu Yang could only let Imo Qingwu take advantage of it. Because Chu Yang really couldn't imagine. If he hugged Imo Tianji or Gu Duxing tightly, what would it be like? Just thinking about it made Minister Chu's scalp tingle. Knock, knock, knock. He knocked on the door 3 times. Before Imo Qingwu could respond, the door beside her had already opened by itself with a squeak. Imo Tianji had come out. He closed the door behind him as soon as he came out. He looked at Chu Yang with a vigilant expression on his face. It seemed as if he was looking at a heinous thief. "Why are you knocking on Qingwu's door so late at night? Don't you know how to avoid it? Don't you know how to think for Qingwu?" Chu Yang said angrily, "What does it have to do with you? I'm already like that with Qingwu. Do I still need to avoid it? I came at this time for Qingwu's sake. But you, why aren't you sleeping in the middle of the night? Don't you know how to avoid it? Why aren't you disappearing? I'm Qingwu's elder brother. I'm concerned about my sister." Imo Qingji roared in a low voice, "Go back to sleep. Your worried face is really ugly. What are you worried about?" Chu Yang frowned and focused his gaze on Imo Tianji's face. Imo Tianji was tongue-tied. He was stunned for a long time and couldn't say a word. The master of calculation and manipulation who was usually eloquent was mute now. "I understand. I didn't expect your thoughts to be so dirty. You're really vulgar." Minister Chu said in disdain, "I looked down on you. I didn't expect you to be such a person. Xiao Wu is really lucky that you didn't lead her astray." Imo Tianji's face turned red. "Bastard. I can't not guard against a bastard like you. It's Xiao Wu's misfortune to have met you." Chu Yang snorted coldly, "You're gauging the heart of a great man with your own mean measure." Imo Tianji fumed. "You still dare to call yourself a great man? Bah." He was about to start a torrent of eloquence to scold Chu Yang. At this moment, the door opened again. Imo Qingwu's fluffy hair came out. She was immediately happy. "Chu Yang? What important matter do you have with me? Come in quickly. Second brother, why haven't you left yet? It's already so late. Go back to sleep. You're not allowed to go in." Imo Tianji bared his fangs and brandished his claws. He was going crazy. He was just mocked by Chu Yang and now he was being chased by his sister. What was this? Was there any justice in this world? Imo Qingwu snorted and pulled Chu Yang into the room. Then she said to her second brother, "Second brother, it's already so late and you're still not sleeping. Other people still need to sleep. Is life really so boring? Go to sleep quickly." With a bang she closed the door. Seeing Chu Yang's victorious gaze disappear behind the door, Imo Tianji was speechless. "Little sister, I'm doing this for your own good. Don't let that bastard get away with it." Sigh. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.